Chapter 1651. Audiobook carefully sized up this wealthy businessman, who looked very much like the Lord of the Rings and whose 10 fingers glowed with the light of jewels, and couldn't help feeling a little suspicious. There seemed to be something wrong with this person. If he was a native of this technology city, it stood to reason that he shouldn't know about the outside world. The more he looked at this wealthy businessman's eyes, the more he felt that they were somewhat familiar, as if he had seen them somewhere before. Very quickly he suddenly thought of something. "You're Mr. Ming?" Hearing Audiobook's words, the rich businessman's face visibly twitched, and he couldn't help laughing out loud. "Ai, how boring. I thought I'd be able to fool him for a little longer." Audiobook was utterly stupefied. He hadn't expected this wealthy businessman to actually be Wang Ming. But how on earth had Wang Ming done it? Possession? That was clearly impossible. He wasn't a cultivator. Could it be that he had used mental energy to control him? But in this world of nothingness, which was completely isolated from the outside world, no matter how smart Wang Ming was, he shouldn't be able to do this, right? I originally wanted to have a chat with this Shouchong, but unfortunately, someone beat me to it, Wang Ming said as he borrowed the wealthy businessman's body. The greatest advantage of controlling one's psyche was that this kind of disguise was almost impossible to see through. If it wasn't for the fact that Audiobook had done some research on the two Wang brothers and had strong observational skills to be able to distinguish the details, he probably wouldn't have been able to connect the dots so easily to Wang Ming. Naturally, luck had played a role in the speculation he had blurted out just now. Audiobook never thought that he would be right. "Mr. Ming said that Shouchong has been captured? And brought here?" Audiobook suddenly felt that the clues in this matter had become tangled and complicated. His original goal had been to follow behind Zhang Zidong and Li Xian, and his main goal had been to help Zhou Zi. "That's right. Shouchong has a miniature transmitter that I developed and designed. When my brain waves tracked the device, it felt like I had accidentally fallen into a space-time crack. Left with no choice, I could only separate a portion of my brain waves to get out of danger," Wang Ming said. Wang Ming said, "After a short period of time, the separated brain waves were transmitted to this space." "The gecko cutting off its tail?" Audiobook asked. "Yes, you can understand it that way." Using the rich merchant's body, Wang Ming nodded and said, "But this is an alternate space after all. My separated brain waves were very weak, and I couldn't stay in this state for a long time. There was no other way, so I could only find someone who looked very rich to control." "I see," Audiobook asked with concern. "Then isn't Mr. Ming in danger?" "I don't think it's dangerous. In any case, this separated brainwave is similar to your cloning technique. It won't affect my body. It's just that the duration is very limited." Wang Ming laughed. "Fortunately, the fatty I possessed isn't just rich. His IQ was not bad either. In this way, I could generate new brainwaves through his brain, supplementing the brainwaves that I had separated from my main body. But with this method, the production is less than the consumption, so I won't be able to sustain it for too long." As Zhou Zi listened to Wang Ming's explanation, his mouth dropped open. Although he had no idea what Wang Ming was saying, even so he could understand the basic situation. The rich merchant sitting in front of them wasn't communicating with his main body, but had been possessed by some senior whom Audiobook knew. On the other side, Qinzong was also very curious about Wang Ming's appearance. Could an ordinary human who wasn't a cultivator actually develop the human brain to such an extreme level? He marveled in his heart. Once again, he felt that the world was full of extraordinary things. Although he had accidentally fallen into a strange place from his original world, it now looked like he hadn't gained anything at all. Audiobook was full of admiration. As expected of Mr. Ming, only Mr. Ming can do something like this. Wang Ming waved his hand, and at some point, he had started to learn to be modest. "No need for formalities. I already know who this brother Zi is. Why don't you introduce me to this brother with a very pale face? His name is Qinzong, and he seems to be a strange man who fell from another space." After saying that, Audiobook whispered in Wang Ming's ear, "Mr. Ming, there's something strange about this person. I feel that his luck is exceptionally good." "Qinzong?" Wang Ming mulled over the name carefully. Then, As if he had suddenly been struck by something, he shuddered violently. Qinzong. Wasn't this the name of a character in the game Cultivation Emulator, which Bai Qiao had designed back then? He had also participated in the development of this game back then, so it was still fresh in his memory. Of course, that wasn't the crux of the matter. The crux of the matter was that he remembered testing it back then. He had once created a character called Qinzong in this game, and his luck value had been set to max. Interesting. Wang Ming couldn't help laughing in his heart. He looked at Qinzong without batting an eyelid. He didn't dare confirm that Qinzong and the character Wang Ling had created in the game were really related. But if this was true, it could also be considered strange news. Thus, Wang Ming took the initiative to stretch out his hand. Hello, Mr. Paperman Qinzong. Realizing that he had let the cat out of the bag, Wang Ming stuck out his tongue in an attempt to brush it off. Sorry, I was thinking about something else just now. Hello, Mr. Qinzong, nice to meet you. Qinzong gave him his usual gentle smile. Since your brother Zhuo's friend, you're also my friend. Since brother Zhuo calls you Mr. Ming, I'll do the same. Of course, Wang Ming said with a smile. But then again, is Mr. Ming aware of your current identity? Of course, said Wang Ming. Because of the brainwave intervention, he had already completely figured out this rich businessman's background. This person is called Jia Bugui. He runs an auction house in the core area, so he's a reputable person. Sitting upright in a chair in the stands, Wang Ming smiled. Also, thanks to him, I know a lot of other information about the core area. For example, the lord that these bigwigs often talk about. After the boxing match, I can explain everything to you one by one. For now, let's watch the match first. Classmate Ryoko is working very hard. She's going to face this black dragon next. Classmate Ryoko? Hearing this, Josie was startled at first, and then looked at Wang Ming in astonishment. Mr. Ming, are you saying that the one on stage is sister-in-law? If I remember correctly, didn't you live with Zhuo for a while? Your sister-in-law's chest is so flat, can't you tell? After Wang Ming said this, Josie's face instantly turned red. Zhuo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As expected of Mr. Ming. Don't worry, I definitely didn't judge her based on her chest. Wang Ming smiled. The truth was that everyone's brainwave signal had its own unique frequency. In order to make it easier to identify acquaintances, Wang Ming had the habit of memorizing the brainwave frequency of anyone he had met before. Only Wang Ming could do this kind of unique identification. Thus, he didn't need to use any fancy tricks at all. He had already recognized Kiyomiya Ryoko the moment she appeared as the cloaked person. So, Mr. Ming also knows about the other two people? Zhuo asked curiously. Of course, Wang Ming said bluntly. One of them is Rongrong. I can't detect the frequency of the other's brainwaves, but I can tell that it's senior golden lamp. Monks have a pure heart and few desires to begin with. It's really them. Zhuo couldn't say it out loud. But why did Ryoko and the others come here? I clearly told her. Girls in love are paranoid. I guess she's worried that when you're not in her line of sight, you'll flirt with someone else. Wang Ming laughed. Zhuo. Really, most likely. Wang Ming spread his hands. At that moment, this was a deep conversation between two men in love among the battle sect members present. Wang Ming said, You don't know, Factor got so jealous a while ago that she deleted all the videos on my internet drive. They were my treasured collection for many years. That's indeed a little unfortunate. Zhuo smiled bitterly. It's not unfortunate, because they were originally used to confuse her. Don't tell me that people nowadays actually store their treasured videos on an internet cloud drive. Wouldn't it be a huge loss if they deleted them? Wang Ming shrugged and said, Like me, it's directly uploaded to my brain, so I can stream it anytime, anywhere. Chapter 1652. The dojo challenge had only been going on for less than 30 minutes. But Kiyomiya Ryoko had already defeated 4 people in a row, and reached the final checkpoint at the speed of light. He had become a huge dark horse that stood out on the scene. The dignitaries and those who had placed bets all roared, and there was a great hubbub of voices. Mia. Too strong. Forever a god. For a moment, the situation was changing rapidly. At first, No one had paid any attention to this thin and weak little man, but they had never expected him to be so concentrated as the essence. He didn't make a move, but when he did, he amazed the world with a single brilliant feat. "I'm sorry, but I won't give you another chance." At that moment, the black dragon standing in front of Kiyomiya Ryoko looked like the most ordinary person, but he gave off a vague sense of danger. He stared at Kiyomiya Ryoko, and his black eyes, without the scara, looked especially terrifying. Kiyomiya Ryoko stared at the black dragon with rapt attention. She saw him clench the ground with his toes, and the ground in the arena was scraped by his toes, which then cracked in all directions. Bang! The black dragon's feet shot out of the ground like a vigorous beast. His speed was unbelievably fast, completely incomparable to that of the 4 people he had encountered before. On the edge of the arena, Lotus Sun was sweating inwardly. She was sure that this black dragon had more than just the combat strength of the Golden Core stage. Although the average combat strength of the Guardians of the 5 checkpoints was officially at the Golden Core stage, Lotus Sun could sense this speed and explosive power just by relying on the passive ability of her and Mysterious Seas One with the sword. This black dragon was definitely not at the Golden Core stage. He had to be at the Tao God level at the very least. She had once cut down a Tao God with the multi-core Mysterious Sea Sword, so she knew how strong they were. Although the black dragon had hidden himself very well, she could still sense him. He quickly approached Kiyomiya Ryoko and stretched out his hand. His claw was like a flying dragon emerging from the clouds, making a deafening explosion. The gap in their realms was so great that Kiyomiya Ryoko was so frightened that she couldn't react at all. The next second, the flying dragon searching the cloud's claw, formed a fierce astral wind, and attacked Kiyomiya Ryoko's chest. Even though Kiyomiya Ryoko knew that she didn't have a chest for others to attack, as a girl, she still subconsciously wanted to block it. Too slow. The black dragon's lips curled into a cold smile. He could almost foresee the scene of the astral wind tearing the clothes on Ryoko's chest. This was his bad taste when he fought with others. Almost everyone who knew about the black dragon knew that anyone who fought with the black dragon would have their clothes torn to shreds, regardless of whether they were dead or alive. However, just as the black dragon's fingernails were less than half an inch away from Ryoko's chest, an incredible scene appeared. The black dragon iron claw that was about to hit Ryoko was blocked by a refracted golden light. No matter how hard the black dragon tried, it was unable to shake the golden light. "This is impossible." The black dragon roared in a low voice, unable to believe what had just happened. He was supremely confident in his strength. After all, he was created by that lord. All the spare parts in his body were different from the ones sold in this technology city. It was not a part forged from the materials of this world. The black dragon clearly remembered how that lord had smelted those broken, ancient terracotta warriors into spare parts before finally inserting them into his body. "A new divine weapon," Wang Ming said at that moment, crossing his arms. This was something he had learned from Jia Bugui's memories. The name Black Dragon was just a name the man in front of him used to disguise his true identity in this underground boxing arena. As for its real name, it was called the New Ancient Divine Weapon. New Ancient Divine Weapon? Ajwa immediately reacted. So the Lord who created the Black Dragon also had something to do with the creation of ancient divine weapons. He probably inherited it from the Heartless Ancestor, Wang Ming said. This Black Dragon is the original New Ancient Divine Weapon. In other words, this Black Dragon is stronger than the ancient divine weapons Shifu encountered earlier. Ajwa murmured in his heart with a frown. He was secretly amazed at the changes in the old and new ancient divine weapons. The original ancient divine weapons were huge. Although they looked very lethal, they were in the end too bloated and looked a little cumbersome when they moved. But this new ancient divine weapon had actually been completely forged into the appearance of a human cultivator. At this thought, Ajwa suddenly realized something, as if with a start. Have you finally realized it? At that moment, Wang Ming's expression also started to turn a little grave as he held Boss Jia's body. Could it be that the purpose of the Heartless Ancestor establishing this technology city is... Ajwa thought of an incredibly dark perspective. You're thinking the same thing I am. At that moment, Wang Ming said telepathically through brainwaves. This person wants to cultivate this technology city into an incubator base for the new ancient divine weapons. But this kind of thing, is it possible? From the memories I've obtained, I can see that he's already dead. Currently, the nobles in the core area had their bodies mechanized to over 89%. Only 20% were human tissue, and these things are essentially foreshadowing. Wang Ming said. In fact, he hadn't been interested in this technology city at first, but after learning about the rich businessman's memories, he suddenly wanted to know more about it. It was purely an inspiration for the following research work on the new talisman. Mr. Ming said that he's laying the groundwork. These people are so mechanized. As long as we go deeper, we'll be able to kill them. As long as they go deeper, maybe they just need a chip to replace their brains. Then, everyone will become a human weapon. This kind of thing. Who would voluntarily apply to replace their brains with a chip? Although it sounds a little inconceivable, based on how things are going, that's definitely what's going to happen next. Wang Ming said, human civilization has always been a process of continuous progress. Once the rumor that a chip brain is more reliable than a human brain gets out, in order to enjoy a longer and more luxurious life, there would definitely be people who would choose to do this. Then a new wave of copycats will begin. Then if there's negative news, there can't be negative news. At that moment, Wang Ming said solemnly, these people have already been implanted with chips, and a simple program can seal their mouths. At that time, black and white will be reversed, and everyone in this technology city, from the nobles to the poor, will be completely fooled. When Wang Ming said this, Ajua's mind was already filled with images. If the heartless patriarch's purpose in establishing this technology city was really to serve as an incubation base for the new ancient divine weapons, then once his plan succeeded, everyone in this technology city, he would have a new ancient divine weapon army with a population of hundreds of millions. While Ajua was in a momentary daze, a shocking scene once again took place in the boxing ring in front of him. After several fruitless attacks, Black Dragon's accumulated anger unexpectedly reached its peak. Black runes rose from under his feet and wound around his legs like snakes before finally crawling all over his body. Ryoko Kamiya frowned deeply. This was a suffocating evil power. For some reason, Ryoko Kamiya felt a little disgusted. Lotus Sun sensed that something wasn't right with Ryoko. Senior Golden Lamp. There seems to be something wrong with Ryoko. The monk's face was calm. This is the power of Hell of Azura, which has a certain restraining effect on the Buddha light of the light blessing spell. Although it won't be enough to undo version 4.0 of the light blessing spell, it will definitely make Miss Ryoko feel uncomfortable. After all, she isn't a Buddhist, but the power of Hell of Azura specializes in attacking the heart. Lotus Sun became anxious. Then what should we do? Don't worry, Miss Rong. After thinking for a moment, the monk said, then it's this poor monk's turn. Senior, you mean, in version 4.0 of the light blessing spell, the person who is blessed has the right to use it to fulfill a wish. In a critical moment, this poor monk will be able to take over the body for the time being by silently reciting the Great Mercy spell. Is this okay? It's not a problem. In this poor monk's 1,000 lives, I've experienced being a woman. Chapter 1653. After seeing the appearance of the Black Dragon, Jin Deng's eyesight had already seen that the Black Dragon was similar to the ancient divine weapon he had seen before. The incantation of Power of Azura Hell was a kind of demonic magic originating from ancient times. Since the internal parts of the Black Dragon were made of the same material as the ancient divine weapon of ancient times, it was reasonable for the creator to input the magic that would only appear in the ancient times into his memory. It was just that it was a bit beyond Jin Deng's expectation that the first move was a demonic magic. Fortunately, the 4.0 version of the blessing spell on Jamiya Ryoko was powerful enough to not cause any damage to her body. When the black incantation spread up from the soles of her feet like tentacles, Jamiya Ryoko instinctively felt a sense of being bound. This incantation seemed to be able to affect her spiritual will, making her vision gradually blurred. When the monk used the 4.0 blessing spell on her before, he had hinted at the vow repayment mechanism of this spell. Now Jimiya Ryoko felt that the time was ripe. Vow. I want to vow. At the moment when her consciousness gradually became blurred, Jimiya Ryoko almost said in her heart with a weak spiritual will. As soon as her voice died away, a burst of golden light burst out from under her cloak. The voice of Jin Deng sounded in her mind. Miss Ryoko, don't worry, this poor monk is coming. This poor monk will temporarily control your body with Buddha's will. Okay. After a short communication, the golden light emitted from Jimiya Ryoko became more dazzling. Under the blessing of the Buddha's will, there seemed to be boundless Buddha's light flowing out of every pore of Jimiya Ryoko. At the same time, there were Sanskrit characters invisible to ordinary practitioners lingering around Jimiya Ryoko. Almost in this short moment, Jimiya Ryoko's cells were strengthened under the blessing of the Buddha's will. Her spirit was also quickly melted away some illusory and evil forces under the supplement of the Buddha's will. Evil spirit, retreat. Jin Deng burst out the Buddha's voice through Jimiya Ryoko's mouth. Buzz. Bam. A ripple spread out with Jimiya Ryoko as the center. This was the Buddha's purification light, and it was controlled by the Buddha's most sage himself. In the face of this supreme purifying power, the Asura hell power that the Black Dragon had unleashed was completely powerless, and it was quickly defeated in an unstoppable manner. In essence, the incantation of the power of hell was something with the power of withering, weakening, and aging. It affected the mind and then affected the cells of the human body. This curse of the devil path was comprehended by the creator of the spell from the daily lives of human cultivators. Nobody would have thought that somebody would seek inspiration from sloth and procrastination, a common disease among modern cultivators. Fortunately, Jin Deng acted in time. With the blessing of the great Buddha Dharma, a powerful purifying Buddha light swept across the entire arena. At this moment, the boiling underground arena fell into a momentary silence. After all, it was a powerful force unleashed by the most holy Buddhist teachings. For a moment, everyone in the boxing field began to reflect on the mistakes they had made recently. For a moment, Jin Deng heard many people's voices of repentance fall into his mind. I shouldn't have bought spinach. I shouldn't have spent so much money. I clearly knew that spinach wasn't good behavior. If I had known that it would be shopping day, I wouldn't have bought so many things. There's almost no space in the express delivery boxes at home. If I hadn't returned my wife's express delivery, maybe she wouldn't have divorced me. Of course, Jin Deng also heard some familiar voices among these repentant voices. A while ago, I shouldn't have said that the factor was small. Now that I see Yoshiko, I really feel like I was so wrong. Come to think of it, why is Audra so into this? Since there's nothing, why don't I just find a man? I should be a little bolder. As expected, Yoshiko's hand alone isn't enough to satisfy me. Men should be more honest sometimes. I never thought that Yoshiko would actually be jealous of me. What a cute girl. If I had known earlier, I would have listened to Gu Xuanji, that guy, and obediently provided him with a few crispy noodle snack packets before carrying out this mission. Otherwise, I wouldn't have jumped the world line and come to this strange place. Even if I admire Brother Zhua, I shouldn't have secretly taken pictures of him every day. If this goes on, I feel like I'm going to turn into a peeping Tom. Sister-in-law is so jealous. What if she misunderstands that there's something going on between me and Brother Zhua? These tight clothes are really tight around my chest area. Although classmate Wang Ling's milk candy is very sweet, as expected, I still can't eat too much at once. He gave me a sack of it on the old street last time, so much. Sure enough, he still likes me, right? But this milk candy seems a little too potent. Fortunately, it's only temporary, and Yoshiko won't be able to tell if I'm wearing tights. Otherwise, she'll be so envious. I'm actually called a man in a place like this. That's too disrespectful. Sure enough, in that place you have to have something to be feminine. Come to think of it, Rongrong seems to have gotten bigger there. And it's very obvious that she's wearing tights. Oh my god. It was to the point where he had to wear tight clothes. If I had known earlier, I would have been more honest and asked her what method she used before coming here. Even though it sounded like some strange reflections, Yi Zichen felt that it was a strange reflection. It could only be said that Monk Golden Lamp was indeed Monk Golden Lamp. Even though he had heard these things, he gave his friends enough face and didn't make any comments in his heart. Monks were pure and had few desires, and didn't understand the love between men and women in the secular world. Thus, he could only pretend that nothing had happened. Everyone at the scene was in a state of reflection, and the overall atmosphere was silent, which startled Black Dragon. "You, who on earth are you?" Black Dragon felt his mind in a mess. His demonic spell had been defeated, and he had suffered a backlash from the purifying Buddhist light of the golden lamp. His steps started to become unsteady, and he began to stagger in the arena, as if he were drunk. There was a thud. The loud sound of someone kneeling on the ground broke the silence. At that moment, Black Dragon was kneeling on the arena, and his eyes, which had been completely invaded by darkness, gradually revealed the whites of his eyes. Black Dragon's hands trembled as he stared at his palms. His pupils contracted slightly, and a question actually started to echo in his heart. Who on earth am I? Yes. At that moment, a question of reflection also appeared in Black Dragon's mind. He was reflecting on who he was, why did he appear in this world, and where did he come from? And when these questions unfolded in his mind, Black Dragon searched through his seemingly rich memory, only to find that apart from killing, there was nothing else in his mind. All that was left was a blank space. Chapter 1654. When his mind went blank, Black Dragon felt as if a small dot of light had suddenly appeared in the dark world of his heart. It was as if something was awakening in his body, giving him a splitting headache. Almost instantly, the pain of his brain being torn apart made him roll on the ground in pain, roaring incessantly. In the spectator stands, Black Dragon's abnormal reaction caused the silent crowd to boil up again. No one knew what had happened. All they saw was Black Dragon holding his head, his limbs twitching like maggots. Black Dragon, stand up right now. Do you know how much I spent? Zhu Yuanrun roared. He stood below the ring and cursed. But at this moment, Black Dragon could not hear anything else. He only had one question, and that was to know who he was. Why did he appear in this world? All this time, he had only carried out the tasks given to him by a few fixed commanders. He had never thought of getting to the bottom of his identity. But at this moment, Black Dragon felt as if he had faintly changed. In the face of Zhu Yuanruan's curses, his pupils, which had already turned into a normal human, shrank. Then he suppressed the pain in his head and jumped off the ring. This action stunned Zhu Yuanrun and the audience. Black Dragon, you lunatic! Jumping off the ring is forfeiting. Zhu Yuanrun was furious. He never thought that Black Dragon would disobey his orders. This was a hired thug that he had hired from that lord. All the parts on his body were of the highest quality. Just the monthly fee alone was an astronomical figure. But Black Dragon was very useful. As long as Black Dragon went on stage, it meant that he would win. Zhu Yuanrun had spent a lot of money, but Black Dragon had made even more money by accurately punching for him in the ring. At this moment, Black Dragon expressionlessly walked in front of Zhu Yuanrun, grabbed him by the neck and raised him up high. Speak, who am I? Zhu Yuanrun could not breathe from Black Dragon's grip. His limbs twitched as he struggled. He used all the spiritual energy in his body to try to pry Black Dragon's fingers off. But Black Dragon was too strong. No matter how hard he tried, he could not move. Save me. Zhu Yuanrun felt like he was going to die. He had never imagined that he had spent so much money to buy the Black Dragon from that lord. How could he betray him? He had just renewed the fee 2 days ago. He clearly had the highest authority to command the Black Dragon. Buzz. Just as the Black Dragon was about to die, the golden lamp in the body of Kamiya Yoshiko suddenly made a move. A Buddha's light shot out from her fingertips and hit the back of the Black Dragon's hand precisely. The Black Dragon was in pain and had no choice but to separate Zhu Yuanrun. Then, with a stomp of his feet, he transformed into a cannonball and directly blasted a big hole in the ceiling, escaping from the underground arena. This palace was too much of a hindrance. And his commander wasn't just Zhu Yuanrun. There had to be someone who knew the answer he was looking for. Cough cough. Damn Black Dragon. Zhu Yuanrun was like a stray dog. lying on the ground and coughing for a long time before he stood up shakily. Director Zhu, are you all right? That black dragon has gone berserk. What should we do now? Just as the black dragon was about to go berserk, a few servants who were hiding far away came over one after another. What should we do? Put him on the wanted list. How dare he do this to me? Zhu Yuanrun rubbed his red neck. His expression was still painful. Yes, Director Zhu, the servant replied. There is one more thing, Director Zhu. What is it? That Mr. Hu Baoguo ran away. Ran away. Zhu Yuanrun was so angry that he almost fainted. He almost lost his balance. This result could be said to be unexpected, but it was reasonable. The Black Dragon's battle strength was originally above Hu Baoguo's. Even the Black Dragon was suppressed, and with Hu Baoguo's self-preservation personality, he definitely wouldn't continue the next match. But this way, the outcome of this dojo challenge was already very clear. He had lost completely. In the end, the Black Dragon and Hu Baoguo, one betrayed and the other ran away. He didn't even have the chance to secretly manipulate them. Why was he so unlucky this year? Yet so many unexpected things had happened. This year's batch was really the worst he had ever led. Director Zhu. Then now. Announce it. Zhu Yuanrun sat paralyzed on the ground. Although he liked to manipulate the situation behind the scenes and control the situation of the match, at this critical juncture, all paths of escape had been blocked. The only way out for him was to admit defeat. Although he would lose a lot of money, it wasn't like he couldn't afford to lose at all. Of course, there was actually another very important reason why Zhu Yuanrun was so willing to admit defeat. Just now, Kamiya Yoshiko had saved his life from the Black Dragon. After the announcement, bring this Mr. Gong and Dekus to my office. Also, call his companions to my office. Zhu Yuanrun rubbed his throbbing temples, waved his sleeves, and left the scene surrounded by everyone. When the bunny girl whom Zhu Yuanrun had arranged came on stage to announce the winner was Gong, Audiobook still couldn't believe it. He admitted defeat just like that? All paths have been blocked. What else can he do but admit defeat? Qin Zong laughed. I thought he wouldn't admit defeat, but I didn't expect him to be such a straightforward person. Maybe it has something to do with Miss Yoshiko saving him just now? But what on earth is going on with that Black Dragon? I feel like he's a different person. Audiobook frowned. It seems that the stability of this new divine weapon is still a little lacking. That purifying Buddhist light just now made him start to think about life. Wang Ming said, as highly intelligent life forms created by humans, it's theoretically possible for these intelligent life forms to develop self-awareness. Things were becoming more and more interesting to Wang Ming. According to the odds, we can get a total of 60 million yuan. Qinzong said at that moment. I think we should go look for Senior Immortal and the others to make up first. Senior Immortal is also here? Yes, and with Loopy Toad, said Wang Ming. With his brain waves, Wang Ming was already incomparably familiar with sensing the waveforms of these acquaintances. Of course, the most important thing was that apart from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Loopy Toad, he seemed to have also sensed a very subtle fluctuation that seemed to be neither right nor wrong. It was a little like Wang Ling, but it wasn't quite like it. This guy. After another simple probe, Wang Ming couldn't help smiling bitterly in his heart. If his guess was right, Wang Ling probably hadn't personally come to this world. Instead, he was peeping, as expected of Ling Ling. Even though they were separated by a space, they could still peek. Were peeping techniques now so powerful that they could project things across screens? On the other side, Kyuya Ryoko and the others were led to Zhu Yuanruin's office. After a short wait, several of Zhu Yuanruin's manservants arrived at the scene with 10 suitcases full of cash. Because this was a shady business, most transactions in the underground boxing arena were in cash. Daikas counted the numbers lightly, and after confirming that there were no mistakes, he nodded with satisfaction. I never thought that President Zhu would actually keep his promise. This is a little unexpected. I thought this old guy would play Tai Chi with me. Daikas, you've gone too far. Speaking ill of people behind their backs. Am I Zhu Yuanrun, such a shameless person? At that moment, Zhu Yuanrun walked in through the door, looking like an old capitalist in a suit and leather shoes. As soon as he entered, he bowed to Lotus-san, Kuya Ryoko and Jean Deng. Thank you, Mr. Gong, thank you all. If it hadn't been for you just now, I'm afraid I would have died at the hands of the Black Dragon. Daikas smiled. President Zhu, apart from the bonus, it seems you're missing something. I know what you're talking about. I prepared it a long time ago. As he spoke, Zhu Yuanrun took out 4 rainbow crystal cards from his bosom. These are your passes. How come there are 4? Daikas stared at them with wide eyes. For passes. One of them was worth 20 million gold gear coins. This was wealth that people in the slums couldn't accumulate in their entire lives. One of them is for you. The other 3 are for Mr. Gong and his friends, Zhu Yuanrun said generously. He had acquaintances in the core area, so while these 4 passes had cost him some money, they weren't actually as expensive as their market value suggested. There are conditions, right? Kuya Ryoko asked in a changed voice. Mr. Gong is smart. Zhu Yuanrun said solemnly. Actually, it's not too much. I hope that Mr. Gong can help me stop the Black Dragon. This guy has gone crazy, and I'm guessing that his next move will be to find other commanders. They have a deep cooperative relationship with my boxing arena. If I let them die just like that, the consequences will be very troublesome. Chapter 1655. Stop Black Dragon. This mission sounded reasonable, but from what Dekars knew of Zhu Yuanrun, he always felt that this old guy wouldn't be so kind for no reason. After receiving the pass, Zhu Yuanrun didn't force them to stay, and didn't even sign any specific contract with Lotus Sun, Jimiya Ryoko, and Jean Deng. A purely verbal agreement made people feel even more mysterious and uneasy. Because he had obtained the long-awaited Core Zone Pass, Dekars quickly completed the handover of the position of director. The next director was appointed by him. Meanwhile, he packed all kinds of belongings that he had prepared beforehand into a fully packed package, which he placed in a luxuriously decorated carriage. He couldn't wait to go to the core zone, that heavenly world that could be clearly divided from the slums. From the moment he got the pass, Dekars couldn't bear it anymore. At this moment, he stood in front of the carriage and had a final conversation with Lotus Sun and the others. I still maintain my original opinion. This Zhu Yuanrun isn't a simple character. He wants you to deal with the commander. There must be some other reason behind it. Don't believe the nonsense that he's doing this to repay you. Dekars frowned. This person is just a businessman who won't get up early without profit. Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Dekars. We'll be careful. Under the cloak, Lotus Sun thanked him with a smile. She and Jimiya Ryoko naturally also thought of this. As the successors of the Sun and Jimiya families, even though they were very young, they had personally experienced a lot of wars in the business circle since they were young. It was full of murderous intent and undercurrents, and the slightest carelessness could lead to a horrible death. In fact, when Zhu Yuanrun gave them the pass, Lotus Sun and Jimiya Ryoko had a tacit understanding that this boss Zhu might be up to something else. More words. I will not say more. Thank you, everyone, for your help. You've allowed me to achieve what I've always dreamed of. Dekars gave a hearty smile and handed each of them a golden name card he had printed. Ha ha ha. This is my address in the core zone. You're welcome to come and play with me whenever you're there. Then, he stepped onto the luxurious carriage heading to the core area. Accompanied by the long neigh of the white spiritual horse with mechanical limbs, this carriage driven by the Black Deacon under Dekars sped towards the place of his dreams. Lotus Sun gazed at the departing carriage, vaguely sensing that many things had happened. Her willowy brows were tightly furrowed, and a strong sense of unease welled up in her heart. She wasn't like Wang Ling or Golden Lamp, who had that kind of realm and powerful ability to predict the future. However, because of Mysterious C's passive ability of becoming one with the sword, her sixth sense as a girl was magnified limitlessly. This directly gave her an ability similar to Wang Ling's eyelid warning back then. This could be considered a danger warning, but it wasn't as accurate as Wang Ling's. It's all fate. Looking at Dekis, who was leaving, Golden Lamp Monk sighed at this moment. He seemed to have predicted something. Did Senior divine something? Lotus Sun asked. He's about to experience his predestined calamity. Even if this poor monk saves him now, He won't be able to change anything. What's meant to happen will happen sooner or later, so it's better to face it earlier, Golden Lamp Monk said. Unless one could reach Wang Ling's level. Otherwise, no one could have the ability to defy the heavens and change fate. Listening to Golden Lamp, Lotus Sun thought for a moment. Then she sighed. No matter what Senior Golden Lamp thinks, I still don't think we can just sit back and do nothing. Isn't it always a Buddhist disciple's duty to save the common people? When she said this, Lotus Sun felt like she was going a little crazy. She was actually fighting with a supreme Buddhist saint? This was simply inconceivable. Miss Rong is right. Golden Lamp was non-committal. If we don't save one person, how can we save the common people? Lotus Sun continued. Hearing this, Golden Lamp was startled at first, and then he laughed. Since Miss Rong wants to do it, this poor monk will naturally accompany you. Actually, he hadn't expected Lotus Sun to say this. As a supreme Buddhist saint, there was no way he would argue with a girl. And Lotus Sun's words actually weren't unreasonable. Moreover, it sounded like old Jiangxia. After deciding on their next step, Lotus Sun and the other two decided to take action right away. They also boarded a luxurious carriage, but unlike Decus, they had hired the coachman and carriage. In the carriage, Lotus Sun and Kimiya Ryoko exchanged masks. The main reason was that the danger in the core area was unknown, and Lotus Sun felt that it would be very dangerous for Kimiya Ryoko to continue playing the role of Gong. But Lotus Sun was different. Because of Mysterious Sea and Sun Yinger, she had a little ability to protect herself. As for the reason for changing masks, Kimiya Ryoko was clearly very conflicted. In the carriage she asked, "But I still don't understand, why change masks?" "It's to confuse him. To confuse Senior Joie." Lotus Sun casually made up an excuse. "When you were fighting just now, I vaguely sensed that he seemed to recognize you." "Ah, is this for real? My disguise was so good." "That's right. Therefore, if he were to change the mask now, he might be able to confuse them. And their next step is definitely to go to the core area. If we go there first, it'll be good for us to control the situation." Rongrong's right. After saying that, Kimiya Ryoko couldn't help sighing. "AI, that was really dangerous. I was almost recognized." Elsewhere, Zhu Yuanrun stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in his office, using a custom-made high-powered telescope to stare at the only luxurious-looking White Jade Avenue in the slums. Carriages occasionally passed by on the way. This White Jade Avenue was the only road connecting the core area and the slums. It was heavily guarded, and there was no other way to enter. The walls of the core area were 60 meters high, and there was a lightning boundary above them, which wrapped the core area tightly like an egg. The bricks and tiles of the walls were all custom-made, so there was no possibility of smuggling. Director Zhu, Decus and that Mr. Gong have already set off. After waiting in front of the floor-to-ceiling window for a while, Zhu Yuanrun heard the news from his manservant. "Very good. Everything is going according to that lord's plan." Zhu Yuanrun nodded. "That lord?" The manservant was somewhat puzzled. "What else? Do you think I'm so kind as to prepare such expensive passes for them to enter?" Zhu Yuanrun said. "Although I bought these 4 passes through some means. But that lord has reimbursed me all of them. He also compensated me for all the losses caused by the Black Dragon in the casino. So that's how it is, as expected of Director Zhu. What happened next has nothing to do with me." Zhu Yuanrun spread his hands and said leisurely, "Next, it's time for that lord to perform." "What performance?" "That lord is obsessed with the research of the new mechanized cultivator. The Black Dragon is the hand that created him. That Mr. Gong is too outstanding. He's a great seedling. If he can replace his human brain and use it for his own use, he will become a stronger fighter than the Black Dragon." Zhu Yuanrun grinned and said, "In this way, the perfect mechanized cultivator template that lord has always wanted to design is born. After that, as long as it is put into mass production, everything can be controlled." Chapter 1656. There was a tavern called Sega in the slum 6th Ring Road area, and the signboard hanging over its door smelled of light pollution. The purple neon sign flickered at a strange frequency, This was the most prosperous and lively place in the slum area of this technology cultivation city. The rich in the core area didn't just earn money from the rich, but also from the poor. For example, Zhu Yuanran ran a shady business in underground boxing arenas. In addition to several large auction houses in the core area, the wealthy merchant Jia Bugui, who was currently under Wang Ming's control, also benefited behind the scenes from many taverns and bathing centers. For the poor, their lives were inseparable from baths and alcohol, which were excellent ways to relieve the fatigue of the day. Before coming here, Wang Ming had already informed Jia Bugui's manservants to completely clear out the tavern, so that the members of Battle Sect who had come to this world could have a meeting place. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Loopy Toad were the first to arrive after receiving Wang Ming's brainwave message. After coming to the illusory land of nothingness, Loopy Toad took on a human form, which was a rare occurrence. In a modern cultivation city, its beautiful green hair and human form would be laughed at. But that wasn't the case in this technology city. Apart from the people in the core area, every mechanized cultivator displayed their individuality to the extreme, with all sorts of colorful hairstyles. Loopy Toad's beautiful neon green hair in human form could even be seen as a manifestation of its individuality here. When Wang Ming and the others arrived, they pushed open the door and entered to find the two of them carefully sipping a glass of iced whiskey. When they saw each other, they cupped their fists in salute. Wang Ming and Ajua. Greetings, Senior Immortal. Zhou. Greetings, Sect Leader Grenade-throwing. Qin Zong grinned and cupped his fists in salute. So you're the grenade-throwing Senior Immortal that Brother Zhou mentioned? You're younger than I imagined. Brother Wang Ming has already conveyed Brother Qin's matter to me via brainwave. Since we all have the same goal now, once we're done with the illusory land of nothingness, I'll definitely find a way to help Brother Qin return to his original world. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said confidently. Since True Monarch has said so, of course I believe him unconditionally. Also, I feel that we hit it off very well, as if it's not the first time we've met. Qin Zong said with a smile. It's not that urgent to go back, because I find this place quite interesting. Hearing Qin Zong's response, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal breathed a sigh of relief for the time being. In fact, he roughly knew Qin Zong's identity. However, because he had reached an agreement with a certain someone, he didn't say it out loud. Everyone take a seat. We're all brothers, so there's no need to stand on ceremony. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal raised his hand and motioned for everyone to sit down. As always, he was amiable and didn't have the slightest air of a sect leader. Seeing Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's attitude, Ajwa also vaguely sensed something. He somehow felt that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal seemed to know Qin Zong. Moreover, he knew the background of this lucky person. After a few seconds of silence in the tavern, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, Actually, to tell you the truth, back when my title of Great Death Courting Senior had just started to gain popularity, I didn't know what to do. Then, he noticed that there was such a mysterious barrier in the Arctic Circle. It was just that my realm at the time wasn't high enough to explore this place. Senior Immortal already knew? Ajwa was a little surprised by this answer. That's right. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. At that time, I sensed that this was a big game of chess. It was just that given my limited strength, I was afraid I wouldn't have been able to intervene. But the existence of this mysterious country in the Arctic Circle in a special barrier that no one in the world knows about. This has always been a hidden danger. And most importantly, the founder of this mysterious country didn't make any unnecessary movements. In order not to alert the enemy, I had to keep this matter a secret. I just didn't expect that Shoucheng to actually have a special connection to the founder of this mysterious country. Since Senior Immortal already knows that this place is a hidden danger, given your personality, have you already planted spies to monitor and set up a trap? Ajwa asked. Of course I have. Furthermore, I specifically looked for Brother Gu, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Brother Gu protected me, and the other party successfully infiltrated this world. The truth was that the person he had wanted to look for at first had been Wang Ling. But because Wang Ling had really troubled him too much at the time, he hadn't been able to bring himself to do it, so he had later turned to Gu Xuanji. Loopy Toad had listened to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's account of the whole story before anyone else. After he finished listening, Loopy Toad instantly felt like spitting out a mouthful of curses. He felt that Senior Immortal was sometimes too naive. What didn't his little masterling know? I see. Hearing this, Wang Ming and Audiobook nodded. After all, Gu Xuanji was a keeper of order, and an official sent by the heavenly Tao to correct the order of the universe. It wasn't strange for him to know about this. It was just that they were now curious about who on earth this person Gu Xuanji had vouched for was. So who is Senior Gu vouching for? Audiobook asked curiously. As he spoke, he noticed that Qin Zong's expression was a little unusual. For some reason, he seemed to be a little sensitive to the words Senior Gu. This person's background is a little special, and perhaps none of you have heard of him. He started his business by recycling waste. The waste recycling station that you and Brother Zhuo appeared at earlier was actually something that he managed after sneaking in. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. Legend has it that this senior rose to prominence in a wasteland cultivation world to begin with. But before you came here, this senior's real body had already left. Real body? What do you mean, Senior Immortal? After all, I entrusted him to keep an eye on this place for a while. Although I promised him a lot of benefits, I still had to let him go home to take a look. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal explained. So before I came here, I personally looked for Brother Ling and entrusted Venerable Nuan with leaving behind this senior's shadow. Esses, there's actually this kind of operation. Audiobook sucked in a cold breath of air. But isn't the personality of a shadow the complete opposite of the original body? You can't say it's the complete opposite, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. A shadow is just an expression of what most people feel in their hearts. If a person's inner and outer appearance are similar, the shadow they create actually won't be much different. You can just treat it as the original body. This senior's shadow is very obedient, and will do its best to play the role of the original body. Saying this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal clapped his hands. A few seconds later, a person slowly strolled out of the small tavern's back kitchen. When this person pulled open the back kitchen's curtain, everyone finally got a clear look at his face. He was a handsome and delicate youngster, who actually looked about the same age as Wang Ling, but the resolute expression on his face made him look a little mature. He was wearing one-piece overalls and was carrying a long black cloth bag that looked a little like a cello case. Senior Immortal? Is this senior a musician? Zhou Zi raised his hand obediently. A musician? My sister is, but I'm not. The newcomer smiled modestly. With a flip of his hand, he unloaded the big black bag from his back and put it on the ground, then patted it lightly. This is my spirit sword. Spirit sword. Saying this, the youngster unbuckled the black bag and unzipped it. If it wasn't for a spell like the X-ray spell, almost no one would have guessed that inside this bag, which looked like a large musical instrument, was actually a fiery red high-powered sniper rifle. Hello everyone. Allow me to introduce my Nine-Yong Divine Sword, the youngster said with a smile. Then senior's name is? Audiobook asked. Me. He quickly put away his playful expression and his eyes flashed. My name is Xiang Yi. For some reason, after the newcomer gave his name, Audiobook, Zhou Zi, and even Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, these people who had originally lived in this local modern cultivation world suddenly felt as if time and space were intertwining. Chapter 1657. In the illusionary land, in the core area of the technology city, a splendid castle was shrouded in darkness. A thin and long beam of light was refracted from the top of the steeple at the top, which seemed to be connected to the sky. With the beam of light as the center, a barrier without any blind spots spread out and connected to the outer wall of the core area. Below the castle was a splendid night market. It was lively, prosperous, and never-ending, completely different from the deathly stillness that shrouded most areas in the slums. This castle was the place where the legendary lord lived. The only road leading to the castle was the main road that had been completely cordoned off more than 10 hours ago. It was dozens of kilometers long. Mechanized cultivator guards were stationed every 10 meters, and countless tiny reconnaissance drones the size of fireflies were hovering in the sky. They were moving around the castle in a regular pattern, monitoring all unusual movements around the castle. Li Xian and Zhang Zipei had successfully sneaked into an astrology club named Starry Sky. Yes, Zhang Zipei played his old tricks again and stole 2 passes of the dignitaries in the core area so that they could come to the club without any hindrance. Li Xian, as the captain of the ancient experts, was naturally against the idea of stealing. However, after Zhang Zipei stole a few passes, he was forced to accept the arrangement. Even if he did not accept it, Zhang Zipei would find other ways to get what he wanted. For example, the 10 million gold gear coins they had right now was stolen by Zhang Zipei. His goal was clear. After sneaking into the core area, he immediately stole the signal base station, installed near the core area, and began to send fraudulent text messages. The specific content of the text messages was very simple. He said that he was the secret disciple of the Lord, and that he had made a bet with the Lord for a certain research project. Right now he was collecting research funds. He was confident that he could prove that his theory was completely correct. If the bet was successful, he would receive a bonus 100 times the research funds. When he got the bonus, he would give it back to all the sponsors of the research. There was no telling if it was because he was stupid and had too much money. Li Xian did not expect that someone would really keep transferring money to Zhang Zipei's new electronic wallet. In just a few hours, they had collected a total of 10 million gold gear coins and arrived at the astrology club that was famous for divination. The membership fee for this club was 100,000 gold gear coins per person per year. It was a pleasure for the rich and powerful. After joining the association, in addition to being able to conduct a fortune divination for free every day and a question divination once a week, there was also a monthly Starry Sky Blessing gathering to help people absorb the universe's luck through divine power and become European. However, after some evaluation, Li Xian and Zhang Zipei both felt that they might be able to find the clues they were looking for in this place. As soon as they paid the membership fee and entered the restaurant, Li Xian and Zhang Zizai heard the discussion at the next table. Have you heard? The Black Dragon had escaped, betraying its commander. The government just issued a mobilization order, offering a bounty of 1 million gold gear coins. No wonder martial law has been imposed. It's not necessarily because of the Black Dragon. It's said that a few hours ago, someone saw a mechanical guard carrying a coffin into the castle. It's just hearsay. I don't have any proof. I still think it has something to do with the Black Dragon's escape. So, who is the current commander of the Black Dragon? That Zhu Yuanrun who runs an underground boxing ring in the slums. So it's him. I think it's better not to get involved in this matter. That Black Dragon's combat ability is extraordinary. Even if we really meet him, it's questionable whether he'll be able to live to report the news. That's true. It's said that the Black Dragon is that Lord's proud creation, the first fully mechanized defense-type cultivator. This time, the Black Dragon almost caused the commander to die in his hands. That lord is probably going mad with anger. 3 dignitaries and a blonde lady dressed like a witch were holding hands and discussing around a table. On the table was a crystal ball. Before performing astrological divination, one's body and mind had to be completely relaxed. Therefore, gossiping before the divination was often the most effective. As everyone knew, the best way to relieve stress was actually to gather together and talk bad about outsiders. Anyone who had experience living in a dormitory would definitely understand this. The most outrageous example was when there were 4 people in a dormitory. Each of them would privately create 3 groups, pull in 2 roommates that they thought were passable, and then complain about the 4th annoying person together. It was so real that it was frightening. Originally, they were talking about the Black Dragon. As they chatted, the topic suddenly changed to that lord, and the witch in charge of divination immediately spoke up to control the situation. This was not something they could discuss. That lord could foresee things like a god, monitoring everything, and could hear anything. Regarding this point, the witch was very clear in her heart. She had also heard of a rumor that the light beam refracted from the castle's spire was also known as Thinker. Its role was not only as a barrier. At the same time, it could also play a monitoring role. Although this was only a rumor, in order to avoid trouble, she still smiled and advised with a gentle voice. Gentlemen, do not discuss national affairs to avoid bringing trouble upon yourselves. The three dignitaries nodded. Madam Melissa is right, it was our slip of the tongue. No matter. Then, the astrological divination will officially begin. This person called Melissa spoke quietly, and then began the following instructions. Everyone, please listen to my instructions. First, slowly close your eyes, completely empty your mind and mind. Imagine the starry sky in your mind. Then, in your mind, ask the questions you want to ask. Her mouth muttered. After a few seconds of silence, the crystal ball on the table began to flicker with a faint starlight. Unexpectedly, not a swindler? Li Xian observed from the side for a long time. He thought that this kind of club was a place to cheat the rich, but he did not expect that the witch in front of him actually knew a bit. However, she definitely did not know as much as him. In the ancient times, he was a famous star traveler, manipulating the stars, controlling the stars, attracting the star calamity. All the starry sky spells could be said to be omnipotent. Of course, this also included this astrology. After approximately 3 minutes, this woman called Melissa gently released her hand. The Star Lord has already understood your request, and has given an answer. Then, a girl wearing a maid uniform took out a quill from the side. Melissa quickly wrote down the questions and answers of the 3 people on 3 pieces of paper, and handed them to the 3 people. At this time, Li Xian saw Zhang Zizai walking forward with a sneaky appearance. He immediately knew that this guy's itchy hands had acted up again. Brother Zizai, what are you doing? Nothing much, just taking a look. Zhang Zizai transmitted his voice. To be honest, if not for Li Xian pulling him back, he might have really taken the 3 pieces of paper. But now it was fine not to take them. Because his eyes were sharp, he had already seen what was written on the paper. He transmitted his voice to Li Xian. These 3 people, the first question is, why does everyone call that lord, and not directly call him by his real name? Li Xian, why? Zhang Zizai. Because that person's surname is that, and his first name is a taste. After getting used to calling him, it became that lord. Li Xian. Zhang Zizai. The second question is, if one day the technology city is destroyed, what is the reason? Hearing this, Li Xian could not help but draw back the corner of his mouth. This question is interesting. Zhang Zizai. This woman called Melissa replied, if the world is destroyed, the most likely reason is that someone tripped and caused a big explosion. Tripped and fell. Li Xian was stunned. Was a fall enough to destroy the world? Even if a cultivator at the soul formation stage occasionally fell, it would just leave a hole in the ground. To destroy the world, it would only happen if Wang Ling tripped and fell. One last question. Zhang Zizai continued. The third person asked, is there a second season of the Immortal King's daily life? Li Xian smiled meaningfully. So is there one? Zhang Zizai nodded. There is. Furthermore, it is today. At this moment, when everyone is reading this chapter, Billy has already announced it. Chapter 1658. Melissa's calculations were more accurate than Li Xian had imagined. To be honest, he hadn't been expecting this result. She wasn't a swindler, and in Li Xian's opinion, the accuracy of the astrological divination was just barely passable. The only pity was that there was too little information. Accuracy was one thing, but as an outstanding astrological divination practitioner, the most important thing was to be able to sort out their own clues from the starry sky and accurately say as much as possible about what they saw. Although Melissa's accuracy was high, it also meant that she might have seen very little information. That was because the information obtained from the astrological divination could be true or false, and it was up to the astrological divination practitioner themselves to distinguish between right and wrong. When it came to uncertain information, astrological divination practitioners would generally choose to keep their mouths shut and only say what they were certain about. In this way, they would appear very high and mighty. For example, is there a second season of the Immortal King's daily life? Melissa only saw that there was. Li Xian also saw other information from the astrological divination. For example, The second season of The Immortal King's daily life contained the following elements: Demon World Chapter, Loopy Toad Chapter, Square Root Wong Ling Crushes Everything Square Root Beat Demon Saint Square Root Every Episode of Pretentious Square Root Invisible Hair Candy Square Root Relaxed Sand Sculpture Square Root. Melissa hadn't been able to see any of the above information from the astrological divination. Of course, she might have seen it, but she just couldn't tell if it was right or wrong. Seeing that Li Xian and Zhang Zidong had been staring at her for a long time, Melissa immediately finished what she was doing and turned to them. Gentlemen, would you like to try divination? You're new members, so today you can have your fortune divination and question divination at the same time. Fortune divination? Li Xian smiled gently and said, I know that brilliant divination masters can change luck. Can you do it too? Melissa gave a professional smile. According to the different changes in the astrological divination and the constellation each person belongs to, there will naturally be strong and weak luck. It's impossible for anyone to have excellent luck every day. Oh, is that so? Zhang Zidong was skeptical. He actually didn't believe in such things. After all, in ancient times he had always been lucky. The only time he had made a mistake was when he had fallen at Dao Ancestor Wang's hands. The daily fortune prediction was a free divination for members. But in fact, this seemingly free project was actually very sophisticated. Hearing that the two new guests were interested in luck, Melissa immediately knew that she had to complete her daily KPI in advance. The so-called change of luck is only achieved through some small auxiliary tools to achieve the effect of balancing the luck star. In other words, you can absorb a bit of the luck of the people around you to dilute some of the bad luck on your body. This way, you won't seem so unlucky. Melissa spoke frankly with assurance, showing that she was very professional. However, Li Xian was an expert. This was showing off in front of an expert. The Star of Fate was indeed a special celestial body that could affect one's fate. Moreover, it was indeed possible to use some special astrological tools to guide the luck of the person who received the most blessing to the person who needed to change their luck. However, such a method could only be achieved by an extremely high level of skill. Of course, Li Xian could do it. But Melissa? He guessed that with this lady's ability, she would not be able to do such a thing. However, the situation had not been clarified, and Li Xian could not directly accuse Melissa of swindling and swindling her. Thus he used a probing tone to ask, Then Lady Melissa, in this astrology club, are there any astrologers stronger than you? No, I'm ranked first. Melissa shook her head. Li Xian and Zhang Zipei. All right, a swindler. But regarding the astrology divination, Li Xian was actually very interested. After all, their goal was not to divine astrology, luck, or fortune. They wanted to obtain some specific information. Of course, Li Xian could also use astrology to deduce information. However, to do so through astrology, the crystal ball used for divination was of very high quality. The club's crystal ball was too inferior, and might affect the results of the divination. Of course, the most important thing was, the opponent was an ancient rank expert, and would definitely be prepared in this aspect. It would not be good if they alerted the enemy. Thus, obtaining information from a human was currently the best outcome. All right, Lady Melissa, we need to conduct the divination. At this time Li Xian said, Welcome. Then, can the two of you please follow me? The fortune divination is in another room. Melissa bowed, then led the two of them to a room specially used for astrology divination. In order to prevent the luck from affecting the surrounding people, the divination needed to be done individually. Li Xian and Zhang Zipei communicated with their eyes, and finally, Li Xian took the lead to enter the velvet-carpeted room. After the door was closed, Melissa put on a special purple crystal gauze dress, wrapping her body tightly from head to toe. This was to prevent the astrologers in charge of the divination from affecting the fortune of the examinee. Sit, Mr. Li. Then Melissa and Li Xian sat down facing each other. Different from the crystal ball used for the weekly question and answer, the crystal ball used to test one's fortune was pure black, as deep as a black hole. Li Xian feigned ignorance and asked, Then Lady Melissa, what do I need to do? Put your hand on it? Please clear your mind, and then put your hand on it. First think of something happy, then think of something sad," Melissa said. "Okay." Lucien nodded his head. However, the matter was out of Melissa's expectations, because after the first round of divination, she was actually unable to see the position of Lucien's luck star. The slight astonishment in her eyes told Lucien that Melissa's divination had a problem. "What happened, Lady Melissa?" Lucien laughed. Melissa closed her eyes, not admitting defeat, and used all her strength to calculate. Then in the next second, she suddenly stood up. This is impossible. Why is your luck so good? I've never seen anyone with a fate star that's full." "Because using the luck star to determine one's fortune is not accurate." Lucien laughed calmly. "With Lady Melissa's knowledge, since you know about the luck star, then you should also know about the existence of the fate constellation, right?" Fate constellation. The so-called fate, only with fate can there be luck. Cultivators who have studied astrology can use it to light up their own fate constellation. From there, they can achieve the goal of eternal luck. "Senior, who exactly are you?" Melissa was shocked. "Do you want to learn? I can teach you." Lucien touched the black crystal ball and laughed. "But the condition is that you have to give me something to exchange for it." When Melissa heard this, she immediately pondered for a long time, as if she was going through an intense struggle in her mind. After a few minutes, Lucien asked, "How is it? Have you thought it through?" Melissa seemed to wake up, and then nodded her head with determination. I understand, Senior." Then, she started to take off her amethyst robe in front of Lucien, and then her clothes. At this time, Lucien was even more frightened as he hugged her. "What are you doing? Didn't Senior say that you would give me something to exchange for it?" "But I didn't say that you would give yourself." Chapter 1659. Lucien rejoiced. Among the many ancient powerhouses, he was still considered a gentleman. He would not take advantage of others when they were in a precarious situation. But if it was Zhang Zipei who entered the house, it would be different. The yellow-haired female astrologer in front of him was not Lucien's cup of tea, but Zhang Zipei was a dissolute person, and had stolen from all kinds of people, all kinds of models and skin colors. It was really hard to imagine, if it was Zhang Zipei who entered the house, this Miss Melissa would not even have her bones left. "What I want is not your body. You should know from my face that I am not that kind of person." Lucien sighed helplessly. He was handsome, elegant, and did not look like the trash of that school. In fact, it was Melissa's imagination that was overthinking things. Moreover, she felt that if something really happened between her and Lucien, it would not be a loss. After a moment of silence and awkwardness, Melissa once again wore the clothes she took off, and then sat in front of the divination table. After calming down, she asked indifferently, "Then what does Senior want?" At this time, the two of them had a tacit understanding, and acted as if nothing had happened. "It's very simple. You want me to teach you my craft. Then, I will exchange some information that I am interested in." Lucien stated his conditions. "Senior's astrology is so strong, there is still information that you do not know?" Melissa revealed an inconceivable expression. "Astrology is not omnipotent. Even if it is me, when facing an opponent who is prepared in this aspect, there is still a chance of making a mistake. So it is better to directly ask someone who has the information." Lucien sighed, and said frankly. He knew that Melissa actually had her own concerns, and directly grabbed her hand and placed it on the black crystal ball in front of him, and started a very simple astrology calculation. Then he opened his mouth and said, "Miss Melissa, your mother's body does not seem to be very good. So, you are currently very short of money. This astrology club is opened by your boyfriend, but your boyfriend is a scum, flirting everywhere, so you already have no feelings for him. The reason why you are here to swindle customers to buy transportation products is mainly to treat your mother's cervical spondylosis?" Hearing this, Melissa revealed an inconceivable expression. It was the first time she had met Lucien. It was impossible for anyone to know so much about her. Moreover, Melissa had never mentioned her mother's illness to anyone. At this moment, when she heard Lucien's words, she couldn't hide the shock on her face. "Senior, you." Perhaps this is a little offensive to Lady Melissa, But these are the things I just saw. However, there were some other private matters involved, and if he said too much, it might cause Lady Melissa to feel pain. Let's not talk about it. Li Xian waved his hand and frowned as if he was thinking. He said indifferently, Lady Melissa's mother's illness, I know of a set of primal chaos divine arts that can cure it. Hunyuan cultivation method? Senior Li, can you use the Hunyuan technique to treat my mother's cervical spondylosis? Of course. This set of cultivation technique was very simple, and did not have many realm restrictions. And if he only taught the part of massage therapy, you can learn it yourself. Li Xian said. He crossed his fingers and held his chin. I can teach you how to treat your mother's illness, and I can also teach you some new astrological methods. As long as he grasped the core skills of astrology, in this place, you can completely get rid of your philandering boyfriend. Isn't it popular now for independent women to do it? Wang. Melissa felt her heart beating fiercely. Li Xian's words, directly attacking the soul? She had to say it. It gave her a strong feeling of heartbeat. She had done all of this for so many years. In the end, the simplest reason? It was nothing more than to protect her family. After careful consideration, Melissa raised her head with tears in her eyes. Then Senior, what do you want me to do? Li Xian calmly smiled. I want to inquire about that, Lord. Melissa was not stupid. She had seen Li Xian's methods. In her heart, she had already guessed Li Xian's intentions. She did not say anything. She just turned around and opened a secret compartment. She pressed a button. Instant time? In this fortune divination room, the walls on all four sides were like fish scales that flipped over in an instant, and almost every compartment was embedded with a different colored crystal. After doing all of this, Melissa nervously said, Senior, I have arranged this room for a long time. I do not know if it will be useful, but it is the best way to stop the explorers. But time is limited. Once the energy of the crystal is used up, it will not work. Explorers. This is what that Lord uses to monitor the situation. It is also known as the Will Guard. Melissa said. All of our wills are monitored by that Lord. Senior should have seen the light beam above the castle, right? Unless there is a way to block those light beams. Just as she finished speaking, the energy of the crystal in the room had already been used up. From start to finish, it did not even last for a minute. At this time, Li Xian had completely understood. Melissa did not dare to say anything. She did not even dare to think about the matter regarding that Lord. The operation of the Will Guard was a huge deterrent to all the mechanized cultivators in the technology city. However, people like Li Xian and Zhang Zipei who had snuck in from the outside would not be threatened like this. As long as we block the light beam above the castle, it will be fine. At that moment, Li Xian muttered in his heart, and then sent a telepathic message to Zhang Zipei outside. What do you think, Brother Zipei? It's just stealing light, I'll give it a try. Zhang Zipei received Li Xian's request. Without another word, he disappeared from the divination club like a ghost. At the same time, in Sega Tavern in the slums, a group of people from Battle Sect was also discussing a plan to get rid of this illusory land of nothingness. After hearing about the Will Guards, everyone in the Battle Sect became interested. Will Guard is it? Wang Ming raised his eyebrows in Jia Bugui's body and said, this method of monitoring has been a rumor in the core area for a long time. That's right. I only confirmed it after lurking here for a long time. But this Will Guard has no effect on outsiders like us who have snuck in here. It's just a potential deterrent to the local residents here, Xiangyi replied. Then everyone turned to look at Wang Ming. Wang Ming felt a little creeped out by the stares. You don't have to look at me like that. I'm not a spy. Although I'm currently controlling Jia Bugui's body, the Will Guard can't pick up my brainwave signal, so it's still Jia Bugui's signal that the other party is picking up. Right now, Jia Bugui looks like he's sleeping, so it won't arouse any suspicion. Then does Mr. Wang Ming have a way to connect to Jia Bugui's will? At that moment, Qin Zong and Xiangyi asked almost in unison, their thoughts coinciding. They looked at each other and smiled. Wang Ming immediately understood what the two of them meant. If he could manipulate Jia Bugui's brainwaves and release a false signal, It would be a perfect cover for their next move. But it wasn't like there weren't technical problems with this operation. Once Wang Ming's brainwaves interfered with Jia Bugui's, the two brainwaves would merge into one, and there was a risk of exposure if they weren't careful. I'll try. At that moment, Wang Ming slowly closed his eyes. He hypnotized himself countless times in his heart as he muttered, I'm Jia Bugui. I'm Jia Bugui. I'm Jia Bugui. Brother Zhua, what is Mr. Ming doing? Zhou Zi was puzzled. Zhua replied indifferently, don't you understand? He's trying to hypnotize his own brainwaves to ensure that there are no other risks after he intervenes. The truth was that when Wang Ming began to operate, it wasn't just Zhua. Even grenade-throwing senior immortal, Lupi Toad, Qin Zong and Xiang Yi were deeply shaken. This was clearly just an ordinary person. But an ordinary person with no spirit energy at all was actually able to develop his brain to this extent. It was simply terrifying. A lie repeated 1,000 times was the truth. If you wanted to deceive others, you had to first deceive yourself. Chapter 1660. As a user of brainwaves, Wang Ming naturally knew the danger of connecting two brainwaves in series. It was easy for him to hypnotize himself into Jia Bugui, but if he got too immersed in his role, there was a high chance that he wouldn't be able to come out in the end. However, this was only a small portion of Wang Ming's brain waves. Even if something really did happen when the time came, it would at most be this small portion of his brain waves that would be assimilated, and wouldn't have any impact on the main body in the outside world. After a few minutes, he opened his eyes with a flushed face. Jia Bugui's body had clearly become scalding hot from the operation of the brainwaves, and there was even steam rising from the top of his head. For the time being, it's a success. Wang Ming nodded. I've already homogenized his brainwaves, so I can become him at any time without being detected by the willpower guards. In terms of movement, I have already used my own brainwaves to implant suggestions. You only need to use certain gestures or sounds to control Boss Jia's body to move around. In other words, you haven't completely connected yet? Grenade-throwing senior immortal asked. That's right. Completely connecting the brainwaves and twisting the two brainwaves into a rope. In my opinion, this was the last step that had to be taken. Because once I'm connected, I'll become Jia Bugui. And it's hard to say whether I'll be able to back out, Wang Ming replied. At the moment, he was still in a semi-connected state. Because of the brainwaves, he had become Jia Bugui, which was probably unexpected for the heartless patriarch and his disciple. Wang Ming was also well aware of how important his role was. Therefore, he had to make use of his identity to play every move well. If he made the slightest mistake, everyone here would be at risk of being exposed. And the plan that grenade-throwing senior immortal had painstakingly entrusted to this senior Xiang Yi for so many years would completely turn into bubbles. The people sitting here weren't idiots. Naturally, they could also imagine what Wang Ming was thinking and what his concerns were. It was just as Wang Ming had said. He had to use the identity of Jia Bugui to deceive the heartless patriarch and his disciple through the willpower guard, and lure them into the trap they had set. This was already the last step. At that moment, Qin Zong stared at Wang Ming's Jia Bugui face for a long time before he suddenly thought of something and asked, come to think of it, it wasn't just our group who infiltrated this world, right? I ran into Brother Zhua and classmate Zi. Then I met you guys. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. It was because I saw Miss Rong and Miss Yoshiko's text message. At that time, Brother Dog and I happened to be investigating Shouchong's kidnapping. And in the end, we didn't expect to track them to the edge of this illusory land of nothingness. Hearing this, Zhua was shocked. It was actually Master's wife who sent you a message. No wonder Yoshiko followed you here. It seems that when I sent her the message, she was probably right next to me. Grenade-throwing senior immortal sweated. So they came here because they saw your text message, Brother Zhua? They even called Senior Golden Lamp along in passing. I'm afraid so. Then how do you know about this nihility illusory realm? Naturally, it's Senior Li Xian and Senior Zhang Zipi. They should be the first group to explore this illusory realm. Hearing this, everyone fell into a long silence. It turned out that the real purpose behind this string of nesting dolls was actually to switch maps for the battle sect team-building activity. Are these two seniors very strong? Qinzong asked again at that moment. It wasn't just him. Even Xiang Yi had a puzzled expression on his face. After all, the two of them were the only outsiders in this battle sect team-building activity. These two are 10,000 level experts. Loopy Toad, with its head of lush green hair, also said with a face full of sweat. Hence, after the current analysis, the people in the tavern suddenly discovered an incomparably stiff problem. The first group to enter was Li Xian and Zhang Zipei. The second group was Zhua, Zhou Ziyi and Qinzong. The third group was Lotus Sun, Jimiya Yoshiko and Golden Lamp. And now, the fourth group was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Loopy Toad, Xiang Yi and Wang Ming, who had already merged with the second group. Their current plan was to use the willpower guards to deceive the Heartless Ancestor, to get more information out of him. But now, in a situation where their actions didn't match up, it was very likely that this would result in a false start. That was, the other two groups would be completely unaware of the Heartless Ancestor's plan. They would directly rush over and destroy this willpower guard. Obviously, everyone thought of this and couldn't help feeling a little worried for a moment. It looks like we have to get to the core area as soon as possible and meet up with them. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled bitterly. To be honest, this trip to the illusory land of nothingness had turned out like this. He was partly to blame. He had originally wanted to hide something and investigate in secret. In the end, he hadn't expected other people to also notice this place. But to enter the core area openly, we need to prepare a pass. The market price for a pass is currently 20 million gold gear coins, plus the 60 million silver gear coins that Brother Qinzong earned. I'm afraid that won't be enough for us, said Zhua. That's easy. If I count my money, buying a few passes won't be a problem. It won't be a problem to buy a few. Xiang Yi stood up. After all, he had been asked very early on to be stationed in this world as the head of the waste recycling station, and had accumulated some money. How much can you buy? Based on my family assets, with my meager savings, I can probably buy 3 of them. Xiang Yi did some calculations. Xiang Yi calculated 3 passes for 60 million gold gear coins. Everyone was stunned, and they all looked at him with admiration in their eyes. Is recycling so profitable these days? It's just a trivial trick, Xiang Yi said with a modest smile. But even so, apart from Wang Ming, who had Jia Bugui's identity, there were still 3 people in their group of 7 who didn't meet the requirements to enter the core area. If it's 33, it might work, said Wang Ming. Mr. Ming, you mean? It's not like there aren't any poor people in the core area. However, those who are shabby are mostly slaves and servants that these nobles bought from the slums outside. Wang Ming said, how about this, we'll continue with our current group. Have Brother Xiang Yi give the 3 passes to Odd Brother Zhua's group. Senior Immortal, Brother Xiang Yi and Loopy Toad will have to trouble you to enter the city with me. Of course, no problem. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Then where should we meet up after we enter the city? Jia Bugui has an astrology club in the core area. Let's meet up there, said Wang Ming at that moment. Chapter 1661. When Wang Ming decided to use Jia Bugui's identity to lead Grenade-throwing Senior Immortals group into the core area, the faces of several women instantly flashed through his mind. As one of the few bigwigs in the core area who ran all kinds of brothels and had almost monopolized the market, Jia Bugui had a natural advantage in the core area, but in fact he also had a lot of debts. These debts weren't about money, but about love affairs. When it came to love, Wang Ming had always been single-minded. He had never truly fallen in love with anyone, but once he had given his feelings, he was determined to the end. In fact, when his brainwaves had entered Jia Bugui's body back then, Wang Ming had his own concerns. The main reason was that he had sensed Jia Bugui's romantic nature, and was worried that it would contaminate his pure self and make him unclean. But considering that Jia Bugui's identity would indeed be helpful to their mission plan, Wang Ming had finally made up his mind to take control of his body. Thus, Wang Ming had completely activated Jia Bugui's brainwaves and merged them with Wang Ming's brainwaves. This was Wang Ming's final step in facing death with equanimity. In any case, this was just a small portion of his brainwaves that had been separated from his body. If it was contaminated later, he might as well not put it back. Staying here forever was, in fact, the better choice. Everyone set out one after another. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, Audiobook and Wang Ming led the two carriages and deliberately set off after some time. Audiobook and the others went first. Just like that, they saw the only exclusive main road, the core area of the technology city. Shrouded in the glitter of jewels and treasures, the imperial city, which gave off an extravagant aura, appeared in front of everyone. In the center of the city, above the ancient castle, the light beam that connected all the guards and the powerful defensive barrier was released from the top of the tower. Like a birdcage, it formed an umbrella-shaped protection that enveloped the entire imperial city. Looks like that's the target. Audiobook was a little astonished when he saw this scene from a distance. He thought that after so many days at Wang Ling's side, he had witnessed a lot of big scenes. But as he stood here now, the scene in front of him made him tremble slightly and a little out of control. Was this the power of an ancient expert? Although he had already faintly felt some pressure when he was in the slums, but when he really entered the core area of the imperial city, he felt a little pressure. This world constructed by an immemorial rank powerhouse using the strongest laws was presented before him, and his heart was shaken. For the first time, Audiobook couldn't understand it. Of course, what made him feel even more unreachable right now was not the pressure from the laws of these ancient powerhouses. Instead, he was thinking about something else. That was Wang Ling. He knew very well how powerful Wang Ling was. But the truth was that Wang Ling had never shown 100% of his combat strength in front of him. The laws created by the ancient powerhouses were enough to make him feel this way. If one day he completely removed the talisman seal, what kind of scene would that be? In the team voice space, Audiobook, Zhou and Qinzong created a separate space to communicate in secret, so that the hired driver in front wouldn't hear their plan. That must be the light beam that connects to the willpower guardian. Qinzong rubbed his chin and narrowed his eyes. They were still very far from the ancient castle, but the light beam emitted from the top of the castle made him feel a little uncomfortable. "This light makes me uncomfortable," he said. "Me too." Zhou shivered. He had the lowest realm among them. If it wasn't for the 5 layers of long johns he was wearing, he suspected that he would have fainted as soon as they entered the imperial city. But no matter how uncomfortable it is, we have to endure it first. For now we still have to think of a way to lure out the heartless ancestor and his disciple. There should be a lot of ways to destroy this light beam. Saying this, he suddenly asked Qinzong, "By the way, I don't think I've seen you use any magic treasures?" "I have weapons too. I just don't use it often," Qinzong said, spreading his hands. "And it has been upgraded to a chaotic artifact for a while. It's just that every time I use them, the situation is already perfectly resolved, so there's no place for me to use them." "Are you showing off something?" "No, Brother Zhua. I'm telling the truth." Qinzong laughed. "I'm just a little luckier than the others. You can't blame me." Click. At that moment, a shutter flashed as Audiobook took a photo of Qinzong. "Qinzong." "Audiobook, didn't you say you were luckier? I'll take a photo of you and forward it to see if this mission will go smoothly." Zhou clutched his stomach and burst into laughter. "Brother Zhua, you think Brother Qinzong is a koi fish? Forward it to a collection of good luck?" For a moment, the atmosphere in the carriage fell silent. After a few seconds, Qinzong suddenly felt the atmosphere drop to a visible freezing point. Holding his phone, he could see that it was trembling. "Brother Zhua?" Qinzong asked tentatively. I sent it, Zhou and Qinzong. F***K. Isn't this illusory world equivalent to another world? Why is there a mobile signal? Audiobook was horrified. Was this the same world, the same mobile signal? He had originally wanted to post Qinzong's photo in his WeChat moments, and had planned to set it as a private photo that only he could see, in order to avoid Kimiya Ryoko's misunderstanding. In the end, he had just been absent-minded and had directly sent it out. Furthermore, it just so happened that he was about to die. Not only had Kimiya Ryoko seen it, she had even given him a like. So now, Ajwa instantly broke out in a cold sweat. It's over. It's all over. At that moment, inside the carriage, Ajwa felt the sky go black as he looked up. I'm here, sister-in-law probably won't do anything to you. Shinzong laughed. To be honest, he also wasn't sure why such a coincidence had happened. But generally speaking, given the current situation, it looked like Ajwa was the unlucky one. As long as they were together in the world, Shinzong felt that they would definitely have extraordinary luck in other areas because of the accumulation of luck. In short, Brother Zhua, don't think too much about it. I'm wondering if I should go to the coffin shop and order a coffin for me now. Ajwa dropped his forehead into his hand. In this imperial city, Jia Bugui, who is possessed by Mr. Ming, has eyes and ears everywhere. He'll definitely find a way to find the other two groups led by Master's wife and Senior Li Xian. That was true, but Ajwa felt that he already didn't have the face to meet Kimiya Ryoko. Hahaha, Brother Zhua is right. But have you ever thought that we might run into sister-in-law on the road? Said Shinzong. No way. Ajwa abruptly raised his head at these words. Shinzong had just been joking in passing. Who would have thought that as soon as he said this, outside the window of the carriage, 3 familiar cloaked figures brushed past their carriage. Ajwa looked at Shinzong in horror. Excuse me, has your mouth been blessed? Shinzong? ? Chapter 1662. Although this group of people were wearing masks and cloaks, when the carriage passed by, Ajwa could still sense a hint of coldness emanating from under the cloaks, and he could tell that one of them was Kimiya Ryoko. He broke out in a cold sweat on the spot, making Shinzong very nervous for a moment. He had just wanted to make a joke, and hadn't really planned on running into Kimiya Ryoko on the road. In the end, he hadn't expected luck to be used in this kind of place, and he had hit the nail on the head. Of course, Shinzong hadn't expected Ajwa to be this scared. It looked like he would most likely be the henpecked type in the future. In the carriage, they had a tacit understanding not to disturb Lotus-san and the others. Instead, when the carriage passed an alley, they quietly gave the coachman some money to quietly follow them. Ajwa had mustered up his courage to do this, even though he only dared to let the coachman follow them secretly for now. The main thing was that he didn't know what Ryoko would do if she discovered him. Their purpose in going to the astrology club was to find the remaining 2 groups as soon as possible to avoid any mishaps. In the end, they had run into Kimiya Ryoko on the way here, which was like delivering a pillow to them when they were feeling sleepy. Ajwa had initially thought that cell phone signals wouldn't work in this alternate world, but after the incident in his WeChat moments just now, he instantly saw the light. He immediately wrote 2 messages and sent them to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, telling them their current location, and that they had found Kimiya Ryoko. The other message was sent to Li Xian and Zhang Zizi. But it was more reliable to let Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's physical body inform these 2 ancient seniors. The 2 of them had only just come into contact with modern things like cell phones, and weren't particularly familiar with how to operate them, so it was inevitable that something unexpected would happen. After doing all this, Ajwa breathed a slight sigh of relief. He quietly pulled open the curtains on the side of the carriage, and peeked out the window at Kimiya Ryoko and the others who were hurrying along. What on earth are they going to do? Ajwa murmured. And it seems they specially switched masks with Ryoko. Are they afraid she'll be targeted? Do they want to keep her safe? Ajwa's words were enough of an inspiration. Shinzong rubbed his chin and abruptly said, a dojo challenge in an underground boxing arena costs nearly 6 million gold gear coins and a pass. And sister-in-law's employer was the police chief, Dekars. He himself was here for the pass. Then how did sister-in-law and the other 2 people get their passes? Oh right. Josie nodded. Even if the director gives all the bonus to Yoshiko, a communication pass from the core zone is worth 20 million gold gear coins. That's not enough. Bingo. So the only explanation is that someone is sponsoring them. Shinzong snapped his fingers and said with a calm expression, The person who is most likely to sponsor is the boxing arena operator, Zhu Yuanrun. Is it because Senior Golden Lamp saved him from the Black Dragon? Ajua frowned. Judging from Zhu Yuanruan's hostility towards them in the beginning, he felt that this person was not a nice person. Furthermore, such a cunning person who thought of all sorts of ways to use improper means to trip up his opponent had actually admitted defeat so openly. This also made Ajua vaguely feel that something wasn't right. It seems that Brother Zhua and I both think that this Zhu Yuanrun isn't a good person. In the carriage, Qin Zong folded his arms and analyzed. When all is said and done, this Zhu Yuanrun is just a capitalist who doesn't get up early without profit. This kind of person? It's impossible for him to make a loss. That's why he gave them extra passes. Someone must be helping Zhu Yuanrun to lure the enemy deep into their territory. Ajua and Zhou heard this. They were all silent and deep in thought. The main thing was that Qin Zong's calm analysis made everything sound so reasonable. It could almost be described as impeccable. Of course, Qin Zong actually wasn't too sure about this conclusion. That's just my point of view? Brother Zhua and Brother Z can just listen to it? They might also be confused. Confused? A koi fish like you can also be confused? Ajua laughed in his heart. In fact, Qin Zong hadn't confessed his true identity to Ajua at all, but Ajua already regarded him as a koi fish in his heart. Everything was so natural. But now? The carriage wheels came to a stop again. The driver at the front lifted the curtain. Sirs, the area in front is a private residence? The carriage could not go in. I saw that the lords you were chasing had already entered through the entrance. Okay, many thanks. Ajua nodded. Soon after, they also got off the car. Was it as the coachman had said? What Ajua and the others saw was a magnificent mansion with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters, on which all kinds of ancient mechanical beasts were carved, perfectly blending in with the style of this world. Including the plaque decorated with neon lights on the door, the words D Manor were written on the flickering lights. So this is the official residence of that director? Ajua stood at the door in a daze. Then he started to pace as well. He followed Kya Ryoko and the others in. His intuition had always been accurate. He had a feeling that something bad was about to happen. Even though Ajua knew very well that Monk Jin Deng was here, even if they encountered great danger, it would not be a problem. However, he still had to protect his own woman. This was what a real boyfriend should be like. Should they split into two groups and take the other carriage? As expected, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and the others, who had entered the core city as servants, received news from Ajua. As expected, Brother Zhua is very lucky. Not long after entering the city, we ran into Miss Rong and Miss Ryoko, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said with a smile. Actually, he had already expected this outcome. After all, Ajua was with that one and only koi in the cultivation world. Then are we still going to the astrology club? Xiang Yi asked. We still have to. Every week, a large number of dignitaries pour in to divine the stars and fortune. Although finding these two people in this imperial city is like looking for a needle in a haystack, it's not as difficult as you think. Wang Ming nodded as he used his brainwaves to transmit the location of the astrology club to everyone else's minds. This was a real-time map. The flashing red moving that was their current location, and the destination of the astrology club was marked with a yellow asterisk. It was clear at a glance. It's actually this astrology club? Xiang Yi was startled when he saw the mark on the map. What, you've been there before? Loopy Toad raised its eyebrows and asked. That's right. Come to think of it, it's a coincidence that I actually run a tobacco, alcohol and snacks shop next to the astrology club. I'm the behind-the-scenes boss of that shop. Furthermore, today is the day of the special sale. Special sale. All kinds of snacks. Limited edition figs, limited edition lollipops, limited edition crispy noodle snacks, and so on. The rich and powerful may not be interested in these little things, but the children of the rich and powerful are very happy to buy them. They often carry them back home in boxes for the card collecting event. Xiang Yi laughed. Sure enough, it's the easiest to earn money from children. Otherwise, where do you think I got my 60 million gold gear coins from? Hearing this, everyone in Battle Sect couldn't help falling silent. Limited edition crispy noodle snacks. And it was a limited edition crispy noodle snack from another world. For some reason, everyone in Battle Sect had a feeling at that moment. Perhaps that man was coming. Chapter 1663. Tomorrow was his birthday. Actually, Wang Ling hadn't been looking forward to it since there had been too many mishaps on his birthdays in the past, and he had long since passed the age where he could look forward to birthdays. Every birthday told Wang Ling that he had grown a year older, and that he had become even more powerful. For Wang Ling himself, before he found a way to completely control his combat strength, every birthday was nothing more than a reminder that God had stuffed another spoonful of gunpowder into his body. His peers were now looking forward to their birthdays, but Wang Ling hoped that time could pass a little slower. As far as he could remember, he had never had a birthday party since he was 7 years old, because it was hard to imagine him being able to blow out a candle and create a fire escape grand fireball technique, and directly burn down his home. So this year's birthday present was the same as in previous years. With Wang Ling's permission, Father and Mother Wang still gave him the option to buy something he liked. 17 years old. This year's birthday gift red packets seemed to be more generous than in previous years. Surprisingly, Father Wang wasn't stingy. The couple stuffed 17,000 HNY into the red packets. For Wang Ling, this was shockingly a huge sum of money. When he opened the red packets, he received the couple's heartfelt wishes. On each bright red banknote was written beautifully in pencil, "Happy birthday, son." Father Wang had been fiddling with these 170 banknotes in his study for a long time last night. He had written a lot of well wishes online, and after sorting out his thoughts, he had planned to transcribe them on the banknotes bit by bit. Later, he realized that there were too many well wishes, and it seemed that these 170 banknotes weren't enough to fully express his feelings. Thus, out of all the words he wanted to say, there was only one sentence left: "Happy birthday." But Wang Ling didn't intend to spend all this money. The main thing was that he couldn't think of what he wanted to buy, and what he really wanted to buy was a certain snack from the snack shop, which was so cheap that he didn't need to spend so much money at all. After putting the money away, Wang Ling planned to go to the bank and deposit this huge sum of money into his account. Just as he was about to teleport away, little girl Nguyen had crawled over at some point and tugged at his trousers. Actually, Wang Ling had recently realized that this little girl especially liked to stick to him. And he was not a person who liked to be stuck to by others. Perhaps it was because they were related by blood, but he didn't reject Nguyen's clinginess at all. Wang Ling looked at Wang Nguyen. "Do you want to come with me?" Wang Nguyen exclaimed. "Ah." Therefore he half squatted down and picked little girl Nguyen up. His movements were smooth and natural, and he could not find any mistakes. In fact, this was the result of Wang Ling practicing it many times in private with Loopy Toad, mainly because he was afraid that he would be too stiff and make his little sister uncomfortable. Seeing that Wang Ling had picked her up, little girl Nguyen was also happy. Her chubby body leaned against Wang Ling's shoulder like a little fat bird perched on his shoulder. She liked to nestle in her big brother's position. The whole scene was so warm that it was unbelievable. If there was someone else watching, they would definitely feel that it was unreal. Although he hadn't shown any expression from beginning to end, this gentle gesture, and the way he treated his little sister with such care and gentleness always felt unreal from Wang Ling, the role model of our generation. After depositing the money, the whole process took less than half an hour. The specific time taken was shown below. Wang Ling used the great teleportation spell to move to the nearest bank. The whole process took less than a second. Wang Ling noticed that the ATM machines were under maintenance, so he took the initiative to take a number and wait for it to be processed manually. There were a lot of people on Saturday. Then he had to queue for a full 27 minutes before his turn was called. Then it was time for the manual deposit, which took another 2 minutes. But thanks to this time in the queue, Wang Ling was able to sort out his thoughts about what he wanted this year. He felt that the other world's limited flavor crispy noodle snacks in the land of nothingness seemed pretty good. It was just that the currency in the real world couldn't be used to buy them. But the truth was that Wang Ling had some savings in that world. Because not long after Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had realized that there was a land of nothingness in the North Pole, Wang Ling had in fact already noticed its existence. Because of the other world's limited flavor crispy noodle snacks, they were only available in limited quantities every year. Actually, Wang Ling had resisted the urge to uproot this strange world. Of course, he also clearly knew what on earth these people were planning. Whether it was an old ancient divine weapon or a new one. Wang Ling thought that if someone really thought that they could rule the universe with this scrap of metal, that would be a little too whimsical. The truth was that no matter how old or new an ancient divine weapon was, it was impossible for it to withstand the power of one punch from him. Today was his birthday, and it just so happened that the other world's limited edition Gear Crispy Noodle snacks were on sale in this world. It was said that anyone who drew a crispy noodle snack with a golden gear card in its packaging would receive a free pack of neon rainbow crispy noodle snacks. Wang Ling didn't know how much better it tasted than other crispy noodle snacks, but he knew a little about its effects. It was said that as long as you ate neon rainbow crispy noodle snacks, for the next few days when you went to the toilet, the stuff in the toilet would also turn a beautiful rainbow color. And it would last for a full 7 days. Limited edition crispy noodle snacks sometimes weren't necessarily sold for flavor, but could also be sold for novelty. Ordinary crispy noodle snacks were no longer able to satisfy Wang Ling's needs. These novelty flavor crispy noodle snacks indeed gave Wang Ling a different feeling. They gave him a sense of satisfaction. Of course, when Wang Ling entered the illusory world of nothingness, he had a disguise. His name in this illusory land of nothingness was a single name, which was the word Jean, after the word Ling had been removed. For the bosses of all the game parlors in the core area, this name was an absolute nightmare. Because game parlors were Wang Ling's main source of income in this world's currency. As for Anwan, as long as she was in shadow form, she could stay on Wang Ling's shoulder without anyone noticing. Thus, when Wang Ling put on the white fox mask which he had prepared beforehand, and swaggered into one of the game parlors in the Imperial City, almost in a split second, the game parlors went into level 1 alert mode. It's Jean. God, Jean has appeared again. Is he going to smash the boxing machine again today? When the person in charge of the game parlors saw the familiar figure enter the surveillance room, he instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Staring at Wang Ling's figure, he immediately ordered the person next to him. Quickly find someone to calm him down. Then inform Boss Jia at once and ask him if he has any countermeasures. Didn't the boss go to that underground boxing arena? He came back a long time ago. He's now at the astrology club next door. Good. I'll go ask him right away. Chapter 1664. Illusory Realm, the core area of the Imperial City, in the central hall of the huge ancient castle. An old gentleman wearing a gold-rimmed monocle sat on a dazzling king's chair inlaid with all kinds of beautiful crystals. He held a black scepter in his hands and squinted his eyes into slits, exuding an air of unfathomable depth. The most eye-catching part of his extremely distinctive face was the pitch-black mole at the corner of his mouth. Your Excellency, the Black Dragon has been captured. But by the time we caught him, he had already killed 3 past commanders. A spherical guard floating in the air entered the palace and reported the current situation in an electronic voice. This matter should not be made public. The previous commanders also had backup bodies. Have they been replaced? Naowei held on to his scepter and replied indifferently. All of them have been replaced with newly developed antique divine weapon androids. Up until now, the families of these killed commanders still haven't reacted. This matter has been handled beautifully. Naowei smiled. Shocheng and the Black Dragon are both in place. The merging of the Brain of God has been completed. Now we just have to wait for Mr. Naowei Gong to offer up his body. Have they arrived? Yes, Your Excellency Naowei. They have already entered Daika's mansion. Immediately send people over and surround the mansion. We must capture Gong alive. Try not to damage her body. Yes, Your Excellency. After making all these arrangements, Naowei heaved a long sigh of relief on the king's chair. Back then his master, the Heartless Ancestor, had divided a portion of his left and right brain tissues. One of them had been implanted into his body when the black dragon had been created. The other was in Shochong's body. After years of painstaking preparation, the brain of God had finally been assembled. This made Na Wei very happy. Of course, there was one thing that made him even happier. He had discovered a body that was more suitable for creating antique divine weapons and mass-producing them. If he could obtain such a body, he could replace the existing materials with the latest bionic technology. His antique divine weapon would be peerless and invincible. Following the address Dekars had given them, Lotus Sun and the others smoothly arrived at D Manor. Back in the slums, Skady had already built and operated this magnificent private mansion in the core area through his connections and channels. It was all for the sake of waiting for the day when he obtained the pass and became a true superior. Then he could directly move his family into this magnificent mansion. This was the lifelong dream of all lowly people. Although Daikas was different from the ordinary lowly people as he was the most hopeful person among the ascenders in the slums to enter the core area and move to this huge and magnificent imperial city, the ascenders were still classified as lowly in the archive. The only difference was that their assets and connections were incomparable to those of ordinary scums. They belonged to the higher stages of scums. But now the situation had completely changed. Daikas had finally realized his long-awaited dream. He could live in a large mansion that he had prepared long ago and settle down comfortably in this imperial city. He could have 8 or 10 wives, raise a bunch of cute children, and live the life he wanted. At least, that was what Lotus Sun and Kaguya Ryoko thought when they saw this mansion. But when they actually entered the mansion, it was strangely quiet, which was indeed beyond their expectations. As a powerful ascender, Daikas had already begun to lay out his plans for the interior of the imperial city when he was in the slums. It was impossible that this huge mansion didn't even have a single hired servant. It's a little strange, Rongrong. In the team voice channel, Kaguya Ryoko couldn't help feeling a little nervous. She tugged at Lotus Sun's cloak and could clearly sense that the atmosphere in the mansion wasn't right. I can sense Mr. D's aura. He should be in this room in front of us. Lotus Sun led the way at the very front. In fact, she also had an ominous premonition. Relying on the powerful passive perception ability of man and sword as one, Mysterious C was able to identify Daikast's aura in this mansion, but it was very weak. It was completely different from the Daikast they had parted ways with on the road leading to the core area. When they arrived at the core area, their first reaction wasn't to complete Zhu Yuanruin's mission and go after the Black Dragon, but to catch up to Daikast as soon as possible because of what Monk Jin Deng had said, to prevent him from getting into danger. But looking at the current situation, Lotus Sun sensed that they were still a step too slow. Although Daikast had left before them, it had only been less than an hour. Mr. D. Lotus Sun knocked on the front door of the inner hall. The door wasn't completely locked, and opened easily with a light knock. After Lotus Sun's call, the deathly silent inner hall emitted a strange and soft whimpering sound. The sound was muffled and couldn't be heard at all. If one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't even be able to detect it. Feeling extremely uneasy, Lotus Sun finally walked up to a wooden wine barrel hidden at the back of the inner hall. And Daikast's aura. It was inside this wooden barrel. Clenching her teeth, Lotus Sun summoned up her courage and lifted the lid of the barrel. A foul stench immediately hit them in the face. It was an extremely complex and rancid smell, like meat products that had gone bad after being marinated for a long time. Lotus Sun and Ryoko Kwamiya were dumbfounded, because an eyeball was looking at them from inside the barrel. Even though she couldn't tell what Daikast looked like, she could still tell that it was Daikast's eye. Mr. D. Lotus Sun's eyes instantly turned red, and she tried to use Mysterious C's healing sword chi to heal him. But it was already useless. Daikast had been killed long before they had arrived. Such a big guy had been chopped into pieces, and put together with the scattered parts in this wine barrel. This is the calamity he deserves. Healing sword chi can save people, but it has no effect on the dead. Monk Jin Deng sighed. He made a Buddhist salute to the wooden barrel, and the Buddha's light of rebirth had already condensed in his hand. This beam of light could quickly end Daikast's pain, and allow him to enter a new cycle of reincarnation. But before this beam of light, Jean Deng seemed to think of something, and he extracted the almost inaudible whimpers from the wooden barrel. They converged into a short string of words. This was the message of death that Diecast had gathered with his obsession before he was killed. There were only 2 words: run. Perhaps it's because we left the address earlier, and he calculated that we would come looking for him. That's why he left this message. Monk Jean Deng sighed. He spread out his Buddha's hand, which was full of glittering golden light and boundless divine power of the Buddhist Dharma. Mr. D, this little monk and the 2 girls have received your message. Have a safe journey. This little monk has calculated that you will be incomparably happy in your next life. A beam of light of rebirth fell. In the wooden barrel, Diecast turned into golden powder with his last obsession, and floated towards the pure land of bliss. After doing all this, he saw the 2 emotional girls with teary eyes, and hurriedly comforted them. Miss Rong and Miss Ryoko. Right now, the battle isn't over yet. Keep moving forward. He felt that his words couldn't be said to be comforting. Modern cultivators hadn't experienced too many past wars. But without the peace they were used to enjoying, the true path of cultivation was often much crueler than that of modern cultivation. This was a truth that could only be understood after experiencing it for oneself. Touching upon the cycle of life and death. Except for that man, no one had the ability to change the outcome that had already been decided. Senior Jean Deng, I understand. Wiping away the tears at the corners of her eyes, she raised her eyes and scanned the surroundings with her spiritual sense. Come out, all of you. I will return Mr. D's pain to you several times over. As soon as she said that, a powerful sword chi suddenly howled out of Lotus Sun's body. Next to her, Ryoko Kumiya was completely shaken in that one breath. Rong Rong. She felt that Lotus Sun had become a different person. Or rather, her previous understanding of Lotus Sun was completely incomplete. The sword chi emanating from her body was too strong. Ryoko Kumiya thought that in all her life, she had only felt this kind of awe once, when she had been fortunate enough to meet that extremely famous blade master in Huashio Nation. And now, the sword chi erupting from Lotus Sun seemed to be even more violent than when she had met Blade Master back then. This was the true fury of a hibiscus. Chapter 1665. More than a dozen chilly auras with boundless coldness twisted indifferently from all directions, and their target was the foyer of the mansion where Lotus Sun was currently. These malevolent spirit energies seemed to be replicas. From their intensity to their smell, they were all exactly the same, which made Lotus Sun immediately determine that these people were very likely to be the new ancient divine weapons that Monk Golden Lamp had mentioned before. Only artificial cultivators with strict standards could have such a consistent sense of harmony. From the aura to the spirit energy to the malice seeping out from within, they were all exactly the same. Kumiya Ryoko was terrified. She was not someone who had never seen such a big scene, but the new ancient divine weapons that surrounded them now, even though they were not the final products that had been finalized, each of them had the combat prowess of a quasi-Dao god. Although they weren't at the level of Black Dragon, there were many of them at the moment, and the accumulated malice had a huge impact on Jimiya Ryoko, a golden core cultivator. Surrounded by so many battle machines with such a huge disparity in realm, Jimiya Ryoko's face immediately turned unsightly. But while she had turned pale, Lotus Sun's face was glowing, and she looked ready to fight. This couldn't help making Jimiya Ryoko feel even more bewildered. Wasn't Lotus Sun just at the Foundation establishment stage? Were all Foundation establishment cultivators so brave now? Because she had already become good friends with Lotus Sun, Jimiya Ryoko didn't feel ashamed, but just a little incredulous. Could it be that Senior Golden Lamp had also blessed Lotus Sun? Jimiya Ryoko thought it over, but the doubt in her heart only grew stronger. After all, Monk Golden Lamp had also blessed her, and she knew what it felt like. It was true that one's body would become stronger after being blessed, but in the face of such a huge gap in realm, the fear of the disparity would still involuntarily surface. When she had been dealing with Black Dragon earlier, Jimiya Ryoko's mind had been filled with the scene of Odd Joie, and that pretty boy lovey-dovey. The more she thought about it, the more infuriating it became. and she had no time to think about anything else. But now that they were surrounded by more than a dozen new ancient divine weapons belonging to quasi-Dao gods, the situation had fundamentally changed. Ryoko Kwamiya was not stupid. Even though she found it inconceivable, she could sense that the sword chi on Lotus Sun's body wasn't from Monk Jin Deng's illumination, but from her own power. At this time, outside the inner hall, a dozen or so shadows appeared in front of them through the hazy window paper. Each of them was wearing the same black uniform, with a very special black hemp rope tied around their waists and a clown mask on their faces. One of them circled to the roof, his eyes releasing a golden light through the holes of the clown mask. "The Lord requests that we capture this Mr. Gong alive. As for the rest, you can kill them." "Yes." At the same time, a cold and gloomy aura shot toward the inner hall, locking onto Lotus Sun almost at the same time. Lotus Sun's heart suddenly turned cold. Fortunately, she had swapped masks with Kwamiya Ryoko and used Mysterious C's passive ability of becoming one with the sword to simulate Kwamiya Ryoko's aura with the Fata Morgana illusory aura technique, causing this group of people to lock onto her. "Senior Golden Lamp, protect Yoshiko." "I understand." Jin Deng put his palms together, then stepped forward to protect Kwamiya Ryoko behind him. He hadn't organized Lotus Sun's operation because it was a rare opportunity for her to gain experience. As a senior, it was very immoral to fight for experience points with a junior. "Thank you, senior." With Monk Jin Deng providing logistical support, Lotus Sun could act without any scruples. Then she looked at Kwamiya Ryoko and smiled. "Ryoko, I know you have a lot of doubts right now. I'll explain them to you when I get the chance." The situation was urgent, so she only left her with these words. Then she stepped lightly on the ground and soared into the air, breaking through the ceiling with Mysterious C in her hand. Bang! As the rubble was smashed, the girl's figure appeared along with the azure sword chi. Like a hibiscus rising from the water, her body swirled with the aura of the boundless ocean, forming a sword wave that rushed out in all directions. On the roof, Jin Deng clearly hadn't expected that Mr. Gong would choose to take the initiative to fight in the face of such a siege. When the sword chi from Lotus Sun came rushing at him, a contemptuous expression appeared on his face, and he wanted to reach out to block it. But when his hand came into contact with this seemingly unremarkable sword wave, Jin Deng was stunned to discover that it wasn't an ordinary wave at all, but a tempestuous wave. The unexpected impact carried with it a tyrannical force that made his right arm go numb on the spot. Jin Deng's reaction was swift and fierce. His brain had been instilled with a large number of combat techniques, and in the face of such an unexpected and fierce attack, even if he was suspected of underestimating his opponent, it wasn't as if he was completely without a way to remedy it. Under these circumstances, meeting force with force would only cause him to lose an arm in vain. So he very cleverly used the thinking concept of Taiji Fist. Receive, transform, release. It looked like he was receiving the attack, but in fact he was using the power of transforming force, a kind of force that could move 1,000 caddies with little effort, so that the fierce force brought by the sword chi was continuously dispersed from one point in all directions. As long as this force was dispersed, even if his arm was hit by the attack, it wouldn't completely break. Finally, with the sound of bones dislocating, Jin Deng took a step back. Using the combat techniques instilled in his brain, he resisted the trouble caused by underestimating his opponent. In the end, the price he had to pay was just a dislocation. Like most new mystical weapons, they didn't feel pain, so a dislocation didn't seem to affect them at all. With a calm expression, he used his left arm to help twist it, and the right arm was reattached. This person's reaction is very fast. Faced with Jin Deng's swift and fierce reaction, Lotus Sun was amazed after this test move. It's not that his reaction is fast. All the combat experience of a new ancient divine weapon is the same. They're like calculators that can quickly find a way to deal with different moves in the database. Sun Yinger analyzed in Lotus Sun's mind at that moment. So that's how it is. Lotus Sun nodded. She tightened her grip on Mysterious C's arm, a confident expression on her face. If her opponent was fighting her according to a preset program, then the following battle would be very easy. In Lotus Sun's view, the following battle would be very easy to handle. After all, a computer program was still inputted by humans. Even if it had the ability to learn autonomously, if it encountered a problem that didn't appear in the program, it would be difficult for it to react immediately. As the #1 foundation establishment cultivator on Earth, Lotus Sun's logical thinking was extremely clear. Mysterious C, lend me a hand. She called out to Mysterious C in her heart, and gradually began to unseal this passive ability of becoming one with the sword. When the aura of the Heavenly Tao Magic Cube was slowly released from Mysterious C's azure blade, Jin Deng's expression froze once more. Heavenly Tao Magic Cube? There was actually such a thing? At this moment, he suddenly understood why this girl's sword chi could be so fierce. It was just a Heavenly Tao Magic Cube. As long as he was careful, he should be able to smoothly complete his plan to capture her alive. But what Jin Deng hadn't expected at all was, after Lotus Sun unsealed the power of the first Heavenly Tao Magic Cube, this aura actually continued to soar. So there are 2 magic cubes. Jin Deng couldn't help sweating at his temples. Then, the beads of sweat grew denser and denser, almost as if it was raining down. Because the number of Heavenly Tao Magic Cubes he sensed wasn't just 2. There seemed to be more. A few seconds later, Jin Shue's brain had almost stopped working. Before accepting this mission, he had been full of confidence. But now, no matter how unwilling he was to admit it, he had to admit that he was already a little flustered. After all, before this mission, no one had told him that a spirit sword could actually fuse 6 Heavenly Tao Magic Cubes into it. For Jin Deng, this problem was already a little out of his league. He even had the same question as Kwamiya Ryoko in his mind. Were all Foundation establishment cultivators these days so brave? Chapter 1666. Inside the Mysterious Sea. The divine power of the 6 Heavenly Tao Magic Cubes was working together, and the superimposed power formed a sword pressure that could be described as crushing, which was unimaginably shocking. It was true that Wang Ling now had the remaining 3 cubes of Tao ancestor Wang's primordial Rubik's Cube, which meant that it was only a matter of time before the Mysterious Sea would become a genuine 9-core spirit sword. But even with 3 missing, the pressure was still enough to make one's hair stand on end. How could this be? Led by Jinan, the leader of this group of new ancient divine weapons, everyone was dumbstruck for a moment, their eyes wide and round, very much like the scene in the first episode of The Deer and the Cauldron when Wei Xiaobao was telling the story. How could a girl who was only at the Foundation establishment stage be able to control this spirit sword that had been fused with 6 Heavenly Tao Magic Cubes? At that moment, Jinan realized that his memory was starting to go haywire, because his mind was blank and he couldn't think of a way to deal with this situation at all. The girl with the 6 cores Mysterious C was too powerful. Just by standing there, her body emitted a tsunami of sword pressure, which was as powerful as the end of the world. All of them froze in place and couldn't move a muscle. This was also the first time that Lotus Sun had fully revealed her strongest battle strength in front of outsiders. She hadn't reached such an outrageous level when she had beheaded Old God with her sword earlier, but she was clearly stronger now. No one could have imagined that a Foundation establishment cultivator would actually be able to use a spirit sword to boost her battle strength to the level of a monster. That was right. At that moment, in the eyes of these new ancient divine weapons led by Jinan, Lotus Sun was an out-and-out monster. This couldn't go on. They had to think of a way. Watching Lotus Sun approach him step by step, Jinan began to forcibly control his body, which had been stiffened by the sword pressure. At the same time, the new ancient divine weapons below him, who could also be called androids, did the same thing. They were too close to Lotus Sun to be able to move, so they could only forcibly remove their rigidity, and then put as much distance between them as possible. But this was a ridiculous and face-slapping action. Because before coming here, Jinan had thought that this would be an extremely easy task. Even though this Mr. Gong was very strong, they had the advantage in numbers. It was not impossible for them to subdue him and bring him back to that lord alive and unharmed. But now Jin too felt that the situation had completely changed. Listen to my command. Set up the formation. As long as he could ensure that Gong Xianxing was alive, even if he broke his limbs and crippled him. As long as he's alive, we don't need to think about anything else, Jinan ordered. This was an act of helplessness. Originally, they wanted to bring Mr. Gong, alive and unscathed, to Naui. But now it was clearly impossible. This was a battle where they had to give it their all. The necessary casualties were unavoidable. Hardly had Jin Tu concluded his sentence when more than 10 golden arrows of spiritual energy darted out of the holes and cut apart the space like waves, plowing black cracks in the void that the arrows passed through. This was the battle prowess of a quasi-Dao god. And tearing apart space was a common occurrence. These golden arrows flashed through the void at a speed invisible to the naked eye with terrifying power. Dragging along hideous spatial cracks, they were poignant yet gorgeous as they shot toward Lotus Sun from multiple directions. If these powerful spiritual energy arrows collided with the roof, the huge explosion would instantly raze the mansion to the ground. Lotus Sun stood on the roof. Mysterious Sea's sword chi had already completely covered the entire imperial city, and she could clearly sense the positions of these dozen androids, including the barrier that they had deliberately set up around the mansion before coming here. This was to prevent accidents like this from happening when they attacked, and the impact of the explosion would spread elsewhere. But this was actually helping Lotus Sunday. She stood solemnly in place. With Mysterious Sea's sword chi protecting her body, and the eternal illumination spell that Monk Jin Deng had cast on her during the Yin and Yang death calamity incident, the strength of her body had reached an incredible level. Buzz. Mysterious Sea's protective sword chi was automatically released, forming an eggshell-shaped sword barrier with a radius of 8 feet. These golden arrows that came from all directions couldn't even break through the sword barrier in the end. When they were within 8 feet of Lotus Sun, it was as if time had stopped and they were frozen in the air, unable to move forward even half a step. And then, a horrifying scene occurred. These golden arrows with tremendous energy were actually swallowed up by Lotus Sun's protective sword chi, like a clay ox falling into the sea. They fell into the boundless and deep ocean, and were quickly submerged without a trace. At this moment, Jinan's mind went blank once again. He looked at Lotus Sun's emotionless face, and as he was shaken by this sight, he also sensed the girl's gaze. It was a kind of contempt that completely looked down on them. "Looks like it's my turn now," the girl said. At this moment, Mysterious Sea's sword was already filled with a mysterious azure color. It was sparkling and translucent, and it was incomparably brilliant. It had the depth of the boundless ocean, and at the same time, it was exuding a boundless aura of life. Devastatingly beautiful sword. She spoke indifferently, and with an extremely graceful and beautiful body, she brandished the azure sword and drew a circle around herself. The last time she had used this powerful, devastatingly beautiful sword was when Mysterious Sea and Bai Qiao had fused together. But now, because Mysterious Sea had 6 heavenly Dao magic cubes, this devastatingly beautiful sword had already become her most common skill. The only difference was that last time, it had been a straight slash. She had slashed out sword chi over 10,000 meters. But this time, it was a circular sword chi that slashed out around her. It was like a gorgeous waltz, and the moment it was unleashed, it made people's scalps go numb. Of course, she had even more powerful moves, such as the devastatingly beautiful sword or the devastatingly beautiful sword. But if she used these 2 more powerful moves now, Lotus Sun was a little worried that the barrier that these people had set up around the mansion would be directly shattered by her move, and the innocent residents would be affected. Rumble. The circular sword chi of the devastatingly beautiful sword rushed out, carrying with it a supersonic sound wave that even a Dao god's hearing couldn't hear as it slashed out in all directions. The 16 androids, including Jin Tu, looked horrified. For each and every one of them, this was completely out of their league. It wasn't something they could deal with. Even their battle strength wasn't on the same level. Although they were androids that had been created and were just tools to follow orders, they also cherished their lives. After realizing that they had completely underestimated this, Mr. Gong's battle strength, everyone's first thought was to retreat. But Mysterious Sea's sword chi was really too fast. It swept out in all directions, sweeping away 1,000 enemies. Just as the 16 androids were about to retreat, their line of sight suddenly tilted. It turned out that their heads had already been separated from their bodies, 16 quasi-Dao God-level heads. In that instant, they all fell to the ground. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.